I did say numerous times, I was like, that Erin's not really answering questions here. And they even point out that you're not answering questions. And after they point it out, you still answer questions with questions. Was it still not on purpose at that point? One of them said that you asked them to define virgin. Did you actually do that?
Because Brian had said, he was like, it's not even necessarily that I'm upset I don't get to know the answer. So I was like, oh, he didn't even really care about the answer as to whether or not I'm a virgin. If you're...
You shouldn't have volunteered the information of not going on a date.
What do you mean?
I feel like when you volunteered the information of not going on a date, then it made them like want to pry more into your personal life.
Well, you guys did ask to go on the show, is what both of you said.
Okay. I wrote down something that you said.
I wouldn't say that they're a political podcast. I would say that they're an anti-feminism podcast.
So, yeah, Brian is very, not just like skeptical, but like outright hostile to the idea that like there's any a feminism of patriarchy.
Are you a virgin?
Hold on. Do you think you're being a good representative of feminism right now?
Do we kick her off?
I think they're a
just
perfect representation.
We could. Before we do, no. Hold on. You can. Hold on. What was your intention in coming on tonight?
Be
Have
insufferable.
a lovely discussion with you fine people about dating talk in the 21st
So clearly
century.
that's a lie. Are you going to continue in bad faith?
I don't know, am I?
Dude,
probably just kick her off.
oh my god.
At this point,
we should probably just kick her off because
I
honestly, like,
kick.
we just keep getting
Kick.
lost in these
Look,
loops
here's
over
the
and over and
difference.
over again.
Had you just
wait. Audience.
Yeah.
You have paying audience members, okay? We're giving a show to them. We should leave it to them. Okay, well, they're already saying kick her off.
At this point, would you believe
I mean, we've got a bunch of democracy respecters in here.
Wait.
If you know, we want to respect democracy,
Wait.
I say we just kick her off, man.
At this point,
how can we
would
kick
you
her off?
believe whatever she said? Because like now I'm thinking.
I think she's
no,
full of
because
shit
now
on
you're not
everything.
trustworthy.
She's full of shit on everything.
So how do we
off.
kick her off and not blame the patriarchy at the same time?
I think we should just own the patriarchy and say it's based and just kick her
I
off.
literally have autism and you're 10 times more retarded than I am. Like I literally have diagnosed fucking autism. I was in the classroom with the speds and shit, going on the bus and shit. And
You're
literally
saying words that are not allowed on YouTube.
Listen, here's what it ultimately could have come down to. You could have just said, hey, listen, I'd rather not share that publicly. I don't want to answer that. But you wanted to make it into some game, like some semantic game, and I just don't understand. Like, it's really bad faith. If you just said, look, hey, I don't want to share that, fine. But like when you the first time I asked, you're like, we'll get into it later. And then you refused.
Brian, I'll tell you what it is. Earlier in the conversation, she made a comment about how you enjoy clip farming. Erin
it's not even a flippable moment.
Hold on, just listen to my point.
When you kick her off,
Erin,
it is.
hold on.
Which is why.
Everybody, please silence your mouths. She doesn't like you or your show. She came on the show to obstruct constructive
I
conversation.
Do like the show.
No, you
I'm
don't.
having a good time.
No, if you liked the show, you would actually be good faith.
Yeah.
She came on the show to throw a wrench in the gears and to obstruct constructive conversation, and she's acting like she's not doing it and like we're being crazy and stuff. You should just kick her off the show, man.
Chat.
They are, dude. You had 1,000 people say kick her off right now. You should kick her off right now, Brian.
To like get me off.
Otherwise, we're going to continue wasting
Destiny,
our
you
time
sticking
with
around?
all this bullshit.
What?
You
I'm
sticking
here
around?
Until the end. Yeah,
He's a professional.
I drove all the way to this fucking city, so I'm here for as long as you guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
You drove to this city?
What?
Please.
Right.
I have a question for
I
you.
drove from LA.
Look at your
Destiny.
chat.
No,
Look at your chat right
no,
now.
Wait, I have a
Steven
question.
flew from Miami.
Answer
Is
question
there
before I
anything Erin
fucking-
can do to show good faith right now?
Yeah, be quiet.
Honestly,
I think
you
we're-
had the opportunity.
Yeah, just don't
you
talk
had
to
the
us.
opportunity. So kindly, I'm asking you to leave.
Yeah.
I have a
You're.
question for
Yeah.
He played the
Steven.
sound effect. There's no.
You gotta
doubt.
go.
Hold on.
Steven, would you
Erin,
let
you
her
should
in your
go.
polycule?
Aaron, you should go.
I'm not answering your question.
Yeah, you should
just leave.
Please
I'm not
leave.
doing that.
Thank
Can you
you.
leave? I don't know if your friend wants to come with you, but
I will leave
can-
you guys to ask the very important questions about Stephen and Melina's relationship and diving more
Thank
into
you.
That's
that,
lovely.
right?
Thank you
can
so
leave.
much. See you next week. Bye bye. We love you.
Peace out.
Quickly.
Peace out. You too.
Quickly.
Shows in a row. Hello.
Oh, you're such a troll. I love it.
Anyways,
Can we like scoot over now? Because we
I
have
hope
more.
so, because I'm fucking
Yay, more
cramped.
room.
Brian's capping some content.
All right. All right, I got you guys on now. So yeah, I appreciate you guys coming on. I know last time I invited Pxie on, she ended up talking to somebody else that night, and so she told me next time, just jump in my chat and remind me that I'm supposed to come talk to you. So that's,
Wow.
that's
Salacious.
what yeah, so that's what I did this time.
Oh, wow. Sounds like Pixie's a clout chaser. Did she for somebody else?
Short-term memory and double book my shit and struggle in all aspects of life, both mentally and physically, as we earlier saw.
Did you guys end up talking to Zerka last night?
2 nights ago, we spoke to someone who sounded a lot like Zerka, but I think it might have been like a knockoff. He was saying some wacky shit.
Yeah, he was saying something about his daughter, how he married her.
Yeah, this guy that we were talking to that sounded exactly like Zerka, but wasn't John Zerka, was talking about how he wanted to marry his daughter. It was an interesting conversation.
Wait, so you guys don't even know if it was actually him or not?
I mean, if it was him, there was a possibility of me getting, you know. Yeah, I heard Zerko was banned on Twitch, so I just don't think it was actually him.
So we invited somebody else.
So it definitely was not Zerka. Okay.
Definitely not.
Definitely not.
Okay, I gotcha. I didn't know that. I had no idea.
I don't even know why Zerka is banned on Twitch. I just know that he is.
Oh, that's right. Some girl like mass reported him or something, and he got really upset about it.
Oh, wait, I do know about this. I watched Chud cover it. It was because he was live I don't know if you can do this. Can you live react to somebody's stream? And then, like, if you live react and then your chat ends up brigading them, I think that the other person can report it.
Oh, that's probably what happened then. I could see that.
Maybe. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that is what happened. Is he ended up brigading her.
Yeah. So I think that might have been like, I don't know if that was a temp or a perm, but I think that was what did it.
That's rough.
It is. R.I.P. El Zerka.
R.I.P. Zerka. Well, so you guys have had a crazy couple days. I heard Destiny jumped on the stream the other day, and I went to go see, and the stream was gone. How did that go?
You mean his cousin?
Yeah.
Because I think Destiny is bad on Twitch too.
First it was Zerka. People were saying Zerka came on her stream, and then they were saying that like Steven came on. But no, because Steven's banned on Twitch, so we wouldn't have him as like a guest on.
Never.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
This is all starting to make a lot of sense now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But we did talk to him about our debate performance on the Whatever podcast, and it was a good time.
Yeah.
It just wasn't on stream, unfortunately.
Yes.
Okay. So how did that go?
Well, which part? Do you mean the conversation or do you mean the podcast?
So I guess, yeah. So one of my mods said that he was like going over like things to do better or something like that. And I was wondering like, yeah, how did you guys feel about what he had to say? Because again, I didn't see it, so I don't know what all happened. So I'm just kind of getting like a vibe on all of this.
Oh, well, there's things I know I can definitely improve on. I think I do have to be more concise, and I have to give very like clear, kind of like black and white examples, because then otherwise it gets too muddled and it's too easy for people to twist what I'm saying into bad faith or strawman interpretations. So I think those are 2 things I should keep in mind for the future. I do think that I just really hate that MLD guy. I really do not like him. I think he was dick sucking so hard. I think he was a fucking creep, and I think he was bending over backwards to try to make me seem bad, even though like the other people vehemently disagreed with me, but they weren't trying to strawman me the way that he was. So yeah.
Yeah, we had did you Straighterade, did you see the clip that I sent you a little while ago of Nev on here?
Oh, I saw part of it live, but I didn't see the clip that you sent me. No.
Oh,
what was in it?
It was her talking about the fact that, yeah, he kept putting his arm around her, that like he smelled really bad, that he was super drunk, and that he that he kept putting his arm around Mary, and that he was just kind of like making everybody uncomfortable and being weird.
What I noticed was that he kept getting up.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, I don't know if he was like getting up to use the restroom or to take a call or like what he was doing. But he did get up and go back a few times, which was distracting because even though on stream, their camera setup actually makes the studio and the apartment that they're in look very spacious, but it's not spacious at all. The entire setup is like very closed. It's the table takes up a ton of space. The chairs that we're using are like kind of big. So it's awkward for them to like move back and forth. And then as far as the interactions with me, he asked me if I would ever date Fresh, aka like Walter from Fresh and Fit.
He kept bringing it up.
He kept bringing that up, and then after I got kicked, he was like, "Now she's gonna go bang Fresh."
Like, what the fuck?
Wow.
So, and then he also, what did he say to me? Oh, he said like, "You're Fresh's type. You're a chubby white girl," and I was like, "Okay."
Yeah,
So.
we watched some of that. It took like 3 streams for us to go over that entire podcast. That it was very long. He was definitely, we pointed out how weird he was being and that he kept like putting his arm around people, and he was even like, there are points during the podcast where he's like pointing, he's looking over at the producers, like pointing at his cup, like nodding, like, yeah, this is really good. So we assumed he was getting drunk while he was.
Well, he did, what is it, during the podcast at the end, I don't know if it was still recording or not, but they did explicitly say like he was like drinking a bunch of White Claws, and then Dustin was like, "Damn, they're in White Claws here," and he was like, "Oh, like yeah, that's what I've been doing all night."
He said that to you guys in person?
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, that's what Nev said, is that he was like drinking White Claws the entire night and getting really drunk. So.
The stuff that I saw trending about him, did you watch I know that you saw the clip that I sent you of like Melina like roasting them basically. Mm-hmm. Not even, I mean, like all she did was ask like a really good question and they had a very interesting answer to it, which is that
endure.
He was the one saying that people need to endure and remain in a marriage even if it's emotionally or physically abusive, but when it comes to adultery, I guess
divorce.
That's a divorce. That's grounds for divorce, you know? And I guess if you're a Christian, that makes sense because, well, Chase is a non-denominational Christian. I don't know if MLD is a man of faith, but as far as like the 10 Commandments go, adultery is the only sin that's like mentioned twice because it's a sin just to think about it, and then it's a sin to do it. So to them, it's like, it's super black and white. Oh yeah, that's grounds for divorce. But yeah, I guess we can have a little bit of leeway with, you know, a little bit of domestic, you know, violence and abuse.
To put a woman in their place, you know?
Sometimes she must endure, as he said.
Yeah, I was talking, so we watched the video that you sent of Charlie covering it, and we watched some of that. I didn't like, so Chase, I didn't have as big of an issue with his answer where he's saying like, I can't tell you what to do. I can't make a prescription. Like, you're going to have to figure it out for yourself. But then when she comes back and she's like, okay, well, what if there's infidelity? And he's like, oh yeah. You have to, you got to divorce that. It's like, oh wait, dude, that's, you can't.
And he didn't just say that he wasn't comfortable giving a prescription. He also said, he was like, this is incredibly niche. But
which is not true.
Yeah, domestic violence is not a niche or rare occurrence at all. Maybe he was referring to like Christian couples. It's rare, but I don't see why domestic abuse would be any lower within Christian couples than it would be for non-Christian couples.
That's some burden of proof would be on him to prove that. Basically.
Yeah, because he was like, this is incredibly rare, and there's counseling. And I think he might have given a personal anecdote where he said that he knew somebody who they had a rough period, you know, the rough period with the domestic violence or being emotionally abusive, and they worked through it. So I guess that's where his bias lays, but it's insane to me that he said that. And they're like, he's backtracking because now on Twitter he's saying something else. He was saying that like, no, I said that like, you know, if there's an abusive situation, you should get out or something like that.
Well, in the beginning, he looked at Mary and he was like, well, doesn't the Catholic Church allow like for annulment or whatever when it comes to those cases? And then the MLD guy was a fucking idiot and was like, no, you have to endure. And then they just kind of stayed quiet after that. Mm-hmm. And it was like, and then it doesn't help that when it came to the cheating answer, it was an immediate no. Right? So it's like, if you truly don't agree with this, your answer should have been like immediately like, yeah, get a divorce, whatever. And then also you should have jumped down the other guy's throat for saying endure physical abuse.
Real quick, are you guys using It sounds like your mic is like kind of far away. Are you using like a earpiece or is it an actual microphone?
We're using the phone.
Okay, that's what I figured. I just wanted to make sure. So, sometimes people are on the wrong mic, so I just wanted to make sure. Yeah, I think we even looked it up, and it was something like 25% of relationships have some sort of physical abuse in them, and so they were like acting like that is niche is just insanely wrong.
Incredible.
Yeah,
it's one in 4 women. I think that's what I saw. Are victims of like physical domestic violence, which is like crazy. Like we were talking about just like counting the numbers right there.
Yeah, just from like Mary, Nev, Billy, Pxie, and myself and Melina being on there, like already 1 woman out of 6 statistically should have been or is currently in
or will be
in a relationship that involves domestic violence and abuse. Like, I don't know why he was even attempting to downplay. He was like, where it's like, it's a very niche thing. It's like, it's very common.
I think they were just doing basically a gambit that we didn't have the exact stats that moment, so they could downplay it. But next time, they're kind of fucked because now we know like the exact numbers.
And I don't know if it was Chase or MLD, or maybe it was Brian today on Steven's stream. He was saying that when MLD, like to steel man MLD, if he was saying endure, he wasn't saying endure abuse. He was saying like work on it together and endure and like persist through it and stay in the marriage. But I was like, that's still the same conclusion.
That's the same thing.
It's the same conclusion.
Jesus
like
Christ.
What he's saying is that there is an amount of abuse physically or emotionally that's acceptable and tolerable that you should push through for the sake of your relationship, because to these people, or like, you know, by these people I mean like to MLD and Chase at least, they were saying that like divorce would be a cardinal sin that would be worse than abuse.
Physical abuse.
Yeah.
MLD said that. Where did he say that, on Twitter?
No. We're just basically.
No, he said in the clip that like he was like divorce is worse for kids than abuse.
Oh, I thought that
no,
was,
I mean, where did he take it back?
I think
like,
John Doyle said that too, or whatever.
You said that he was like kind of trying to walk it back, where he said I was only talking about like just stay in the marriage. Where did he say that?
Oh, no. Today, Brian, the host of the Whatever podcast, said on Steven's stream that he didn't feel like MLD was saying endure to make the prescription that people should endure domestic violence in a marriage. He was saying that you should like work together and endure the marriage, not the abuse.
It's the same conclusion.
It's the same conclusion.
Yeah, obviously it's the same thing. Yeah.
So like, I mean, and then Chase was the one who was further clarifying it. Chase is also like, he said that he felt that the clip that has gone viral that was on Melina's TikTok was taken out of context. It was bad faith. Somebody tweeted at him like you should have known better than to trust that whore, and he was like basically, yeah, my mistake, in response to it. This is a Christian man, by the way.
Yeah, I think he feels that way because in the beginning he was like, oh, like doesn't the church like accept that, or the Catholic Church, and then but it got derailed, and then he didn't push back hard enough.
Where did you guys meet in Savannah, or did you guys know each other before Savannah?
I mean, on stream we talked a couple of times, but like we saw each other for the first time in Savannah.
Yeah, we lost.
See, I met you guys in Savannah.
First sight.
I didn't know that. So I knew, like, obviously I had heard both of you on Steven's stream before, but I didn't know that it was Pxie and Erin that I was walking up to. I just saw 2 women and I was like, oh, weird. Like, I don't really see any other women here. You guys want to do an interview? Like, and then as soon as you guys started talking, I heard your voices and I was like, oh, I know who these 2 are.
We're usually, Facebook
women voices.
Yeah. And it's good that you could tell us apart, because that means you don't think all women sound the same.
What, people think you guys sound alike?
No, but that's the joke. That like, woman.
I've been in calls on stream before where people I could tell were addressing. That happened between a conversation that I was in with Counterpoints and Cherry and Mindwave's Wicked Supreme, Steven, and Josiah, or like Pondering Politics, where Counterpoints mistook me, like Cherry, for me. And like he called Cherry like a fucking bitch, and then later on Twitter he was like, I meant to call Straighterade a fucking bitch.
Yeah, you and I had a long conversation about that one. Afterwards. Yeah,
Yeah,
You don't
I
remember
talked to him
that?
on Chad's stream about that. We're cool now.
Okay. Well, so somebody posted on Twitter that I was cooking you, which I didn't feel like I was cooking you, but I obviously was like being critical, but I was more so yelling at my chat because I was disagreeing with what they were saying. But I did cover it over the course of like 3 streams. Like I said, initially, I didn't even know that you guys were going on there. I didn't know Steven was going on there. I didn't know Melina was going on there. I had no idea. And I'm just streaming and I pull up my YouTube and there it is just sitting there. And I was like, oh my goodness, what the hell is this? So we pulled it up.
Weird, man.
Yeah.
Yes. We pulled it up and we just started watching. And yeah, within like the first 15, 20 minutes, I did say numerous times, I was like, Erin's not really answering questions here. Like, she's gotten like 3 or 4 questions and she hasn't answered these at all. Did you feel like you weren't answering questions, or were you trying to not answer questions?
I definitely wasn't clear enough with my answers. No. And it obviously contributed to like the breakdown in the communication really early on. I should have been a lot more like forward and a lot less combative than I was. Because I think between like my monotone voice and like my disposition or whatever, like Brian was genuinely, and I don't blame him, having like a hard read as to like where I was coming from with it, because he thought I was like trying to like sabotage the entire podcast, which I wasn't. But if I'm not being forward in my answers, like I can understand how he like that like is an impediment to the conversation advancing, you know?
Yeah, so I think there was 3 or 4 times in a row where you answered a question with a question. And so then I was like, okay, she just doesn't want to answer these questions. But then later, once you had answered like 4 or 5, 6 or 7 questions, I was like, okay, now she's answering questions. Like this is fine. But then again, the next day, then I found out that you got kicked off. I messaged you and said, do you want to come on and talk? Because I hadn't even seen it yet. And so I was going to go over it and then talk to you about it. But then, like right before you get kicked off, it's the same thing where you're answering questions with questions, and they even point out that you're not answering questions. And after they point it out, you still answer questions with questions. Was it still not on purpose at that point?
Well, there was a point where Mary said, she didn't ask me a question. She said, she just made the observation, you're not answering any questions. And I said, we can go to you next, because it had just come off of me pointing out that like they'd been grilling Steven and Melina for a while on their relationship. And then Chase interjected and he was like, you just didn't answer a question. But Mary didn't ask me a question. She just said that. But yeah, I had been like, I wasn't forward enough. It's true.
And
because,
one of them,
the questions that I remember specifically attempting to answer was when he wanted me to, they asked us like both, it was hard because he wanted answers from each of us, but he was like, so you guys are both feminists, so what is feminism? And so like whoever would start talking or whatever, like Pxie answered, and then I'd kind of like give my own answer. But I wish he had been like, okay, Pxie, what's your definition of patriarchy? Straighterade, what's your definition of patriarchy? And like asked us individually. We got kind of like grouped in a little bit.
We are monolith, like
yeah,
all
like a
women
little hive
are.
mind, you know? And so that was like a misstep on my part, because I don't think I really ever I didn't get to define patriarchy, but then I did start talking about feminism, and it's like not a good, there's no good basis to talk about feminism if I haven't been able to define patriarchy. So that was a misstep on my part. But I was like evasive about the personal questions. And I said to Chase, because Chase asked me like, why don't you want to answer these questions? You're on a dating show. And I said, are you asking me questions about dating, or are you asking me about my sex life and like my personal life? Because I don't want to answer questions about like my personal life like that. But I should have just, I needed to just say that clearly. You know, I didn't expect that they wouldn't drop it, but also I wasn't being clear enough, you know? So like I played into that a little bit.
Yeah, well, there was the body count section where it did seem like it was evasive, and I kept saying, I was like, it seems like she doesn't want to answer it, but I don't know why she doesn't just say, I don't want to answer this question.
My body count was.
She was just asked if she was a virgin. Like, we never got one through like the panel.
Yeah, that show is known for having like the infamous body count part, but he never, I don't think they asked, I think Melina and Steven theirs, and Steven stated he was uncomfortable because Brian said he gave me an out, and he was like, well, I said, you know, if you're uncomfortable answering, just say that, but you're like playing this game.
Yeah.
But later in the podcast, Steven was asked his body count, and he said he had to like repeat multiple times he wasn't comfortable answering.
Well, he said he didn't know.
He said he didn't know, but then he also said he didn't want to answer that, and
When
that he was
said,
comfortable
when he-
answering it, but they still pressed him.
When eventually he said he didn't want to answer it, they asked him a different question then. So yeah, at first he's like, oh, I don't know. Like, I don't keep count. That's weird. That's cringe. Like, I have no idea. So they start like asking different questions. And then eventually he's like, yeah, I'm not going to answer like personal questions like that. And they're like, okay. And they started asking like kind of similar questions, but a little bit different. At one point it was really confusing. So I couldn't hear everybody what they were saying. One of them said that you asked them to define virgin. Did you actually do that?
I genuinely don't remember.
I think one of them joked that you were gonna do that.
Mary
and then
said,
you responded back smartly.
like, no, I didn't even get to respond to Mary at that point. At one point, they asked me again. This is like at least the third or fourth time it's being brought up again. They're like, "Are you a virgin?" And Mary's like, she's gonna say, "What is a virgin? What even is a virgin?" But I don't remember asking it myself. But to be fair, I've watched the podcast. I've only watched clips. I didn't even ever finish it. I watched it a little bit after I was kicked out like live, and they did continue to ask about it because Brian had said, he was like, it's not even necessarily that I'm upset I don't get to know the answer. So I was like, oh, he didn't even really care about the answer as to whether or not I'm a virgin. And then as soon as I left though, he told Pxie, he was like, okay, throw your friend under the bus. You tell me, is she a virgin or not? Obviously, Pixie's not going to answer a personal question like that on my behalf. And then he turned to Steven and he said, do you think there was like a gangbang? So then he asked Steven if he thought I had been gang raped.
Oh my god.
And that's why I didn't want to answer.
TOS.
So, gang raped, you guys. Sorry.
Yeah, another point they said that they started saying that you had said that you had never been on a date. I might have missed that one too. Did you say that you had never been on a date before?
Oh yeah, I said that very early on in the intros. That was actually the thing that led to them asking it for the first time. So we went around the room and we gave our usernames, what name we prefer to be called on the show, our age, and our occupation. And then we were going around in one more circle and they said, okay, please give a relationship status, like if you're single, if you're in a talking phase, if you're...
Yeah, you shouldn't have volunteered the information of not going on a date.
What do you mean?
I feel like when you volunteered the information of not going on a date, then it made them like want to pry more into your personal life.
Well, what happened, I didn't say that. I said I was single and they said, okay, well, what's the longest relationship you've ever been on? And they said, and I said, I've never been in a relationship. And they were like, oh, okay, then like talking or dates or like they said, how many dates have you been on? I said, I've never been on a date. And then they were like, have you had a first kiss? And I said, yes, I've been on a first kiss. I've been on a first kiss.
I've been on a first
I said I've had a first kiss. I've had a kiss before. And then they asked, are you a virgin? And then I joked around a little bit and I said, we'll get into that later. And this was like the foundation for like the biggest miscommunication with that question. Because when I said that, like I said, that podcast is known for the like infamous body count segment. So I was expecting that I would be able to say, I'm not going to answer that at the body count segment. But he returned to it like every 10 minutes.
He was like, you're going to say,
okay, back to you. Are you a virgin? And I was like, when I said we'll get to that late, I should have clarified, like, Brian, when I said we'll get to that later, like, if we're all going to go around and talk about a first sexual experience, then I'll contribute to the conversation because it's not that I'm uncomfortable talking about it. I just don't want to be singled out. Yeah. And at that point, we're literally less than 10 minutes into the podcast. We're still just doing intros. Yeah. And I don't want to hijack it to talk about like my personal sexual experience or be singled out in that way. Like that I'm not cool with. So
did you, like Pxie said, you shouldn't have volunteered that information. Do you feel like you shouldn't have volunteered that information? Because you guys did ask to go on the show is what both of you said.
Okay, Tom, I wrote down something that you said when I was looking through your VOD and your review. Okay. And you said they asked to come on and they wanted to be subjected to it. And there's two responses that I have to that. So we did ask to come on, but right before the show started and we were all talking, like we were talking freely with like Brian and Chase and all the other co-hosts. And I asked, so how do you usually do recruitment for this show? And he said, oh, people reach out to us. So when he said, you asked to come on the show, I think it gives the impression that that's an anomaly, but that's how all of the guests end up on the show, with the exception of the co-hosts. I think they reach out to the co-hosts and they say, would you like to be a co-host on the show? But all the women who appear, which are like mostly OnlyFans models, influencer, Instagram models, who appear on the show, DM them and say, can I come on? So it's not that we didn't do anything like out of the ordinary by doing that. And then what is it?
Well, so I know Nev said that their recruiter reached out to her.
To this. I'm not going to just be like led around by somebody just because they asked me a question, And obviously, I'm not doing a good job of communicating that if I don't just make it clear what my boundaries are, and I should have set the boundary and just enforced it. So he kept pushing it, but I also didn't set it. So he didn't realize he was doing it. And we were like, we're just like at an impasse because he keeps pressing it, not understanding why I'm not answering. And every time I joke about it, I genuinely think this will be the last time he's going to drop it and move on. Yeah. But I shouldn't have assumed that if I'm not communicating it. So he kept like pressing it or whatever, and that's how that escalated to that. So like, just because they're free to ask me any single question that they want, and I'm free to answer how I want. But of course, like a more effective way of answering is to just be forward about what I will answer by answering, what I won't answer by saying no and like why.
Well, yeah, because regardless, even if that's the case, that like everybody who goes on, they ask to go on, you would expect that all of them are going on to a dating show, planning on talking about dating and talking about their personal lives and talking about intimate information. Was that not your plan, or were you guys planning on talking about something else?
I mean, I was okay with talking about that stuff or some of that stuff, but I kind of went on there being like, oh, this is not really a dating podcast. Like, let's be honest. Let's pull the covers. This is a political podcast hidden as a dating podcast.
Like, we were asked at one point, or he asked, I don't know if Chase asked you specifically or kind of just generally directed at us. He said, on that note, like, somehow gender was very tangentially brought up. He was like, what is a woman? And we started talking about, like, transgender issues. And there's multiple other points.
The question, what is feminism? What is patriarchy?
Yeah, what is feminism?
Political issues?
What is patriarchy? I think that already falls outside of like love, dating, even sex. They discuss like Andrew Tate later. And like, again, I guess in like this very roundabout way, Andrew Tate is very infamous in the red pill / manosphere, which is all about dating and like men's rights and being pro men.
But even that's political. But men's rights.
That to me is it's already like outside of like dating things. So they go back and forth between it's a dating podcast when it's convenient to them, but also it's the whatever podcast when they want to talk about politics.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that they're a political podcast. I would say that they're an anti-feminism podcast. They are definitely very anti-feminism, and so most of the
how's that not political?
No, it is political, but that's not it. They don't talk about all politics. They talk about feminism type stuff, right? It's always very focused on feminism type stuff. So like I've heard Brian say numerous times, I've only watched maybe like 3 episodes of the show, but I've heard him say numerous times that he thinks feminism is anti-equality and anti-man, and that is a man-hating movement. And so it seems like most of the time their entire idea of bringing on a bunch of women is to show them that feminism is bad for you. And every time they have a bunch of women on and they talk to them about the fact that they have high body counts, or that they're not traditional women but they want traditional men, or they want to like have high-paying jobs, yet they expect way more of the men that they're looking for, and they have unrealistic standards, and like all of this stuff. It looks like most of what they're doing is just trying to point out that they have bad consequences because of feminism, and then that's what they end up arguing with most people. I think that's what it was with like Lav as well when she went on, is mostly they wanted to just talk about how bad feminism is.
Yeah, I believe, I don't know if he said it in our episode, but I know I've seen a clip of him saying that he believes that the patriarchy is QAnon for women / feminists. So yeah, Brian is very, not just like skeptical, but like outright hostile to the idea that like there's any of feminism, of patriarchy, of the idea that women, experience any sort of like misogyny in their day-to-day life. All of that. Like, he doesn't believe in any of it. I mean, he said explicitly on our podcast that he believes men are more oppressed than women, right?
Yeah. And I wish we got to press him on
And
that.
he said even historically he believes men were more oppressed than women. But we didn't get to really get into that as much as I would have liked.
Yeah, I've heard him say that numerous times, and it's kind of a trap because you can't really say one way or the other. It's like a really like bad thing to get into, because then you're going to have to start playing some sort of numbers game where you're saying like, well, how many oppression points does this thing get you?
Oh, yeah,
And
oppression Olympics.
I said this. I said I'm not interested in like doing oppression Olympics or whatever. I think it's just better to, if we find issues in society, we just address them. And I'm less interested in like playing the blame game of like, but this group is oppressing that group, or this person is to blame, and this group of people does this, unless we're doing so in a very dispassionate way. And we're talking about how like we're not demonizing people. We're just talking about how like these systems are kind of set up in such a way that they don't need any bad actors to persist. They have enough momentum that just sometimes even like existing like within those systems like contributes to like further inequalities, kind of like systemic racism.
Yeah.
so if you had gotten a chance to give your definition of feminism, what would it have been?
You want to go first or me?
Well, I got a chance to say mine, but mine was just not specific enough or clear enough.
So
Yeah.
yours was like a equality amongst the genders, right?
Mine was what is it? So basically the patriarchy, I don't, did I say a system of oppression?
Yeah, that benefits men at the expense of women. But
Yeah.
but also can harm men too.
Yeah.
You said it primarily benefits men at the expense of women, but also can
It can also harm men. Both men and women are harmed under the patriarchy. It just happens to be that women are harmed a little bit more, basically.
Okay.
Which I think is wrong, but
Which,
I should
yeah, I
have been
don't
more
think-
specific.
Yeah, it's always good to like whenever they ask for a definition to follow that up with an example. Like, so for example, this, because you already know they're going to ask for an example anyway, so it just is better to like cut down on the time and be like, here's what I'm talking about. Here's an example of like patriarchy in action. You know?
Yeah. And if it's too theoretical, then it's easy for people to like dismiss it. While if you're like, oh, like for example, like historically women weren't allowed to get jobs. They
Open
weren't
their
cut
own
out
checking
the-
accounts unless they were married, or like divorces. Like I think we very briefly touched on like how women, in order to get divorces, had to prove like fault. You needed to have like witnesses to the fault that you were alleging. So if your husband if there was like infidelity, you had to have somebody corroborate that by showing like this was the person that he cheated on me with, and here's somebody who was witness to that. And like concrete examples like that, so they know we're not just like defining a thing and then trying to use the definition as like, well, it's self-evidently obvious that if the patriarchy is defined that way, then the world is this way, you know?
It's also just harder to dismiss when you have examples that's like clear cut, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that like the best examples to give are like by far the majority of presidents being men, by far the majority of like congressmen being men. That's like, because that obviously men are getting a lot more representation in those cases. And then by far the majority of like Fortune 500 CEOs being men, 82% of American wealth being held by men. Because I think that those normally, so anytime you start giving examples, most people on these shows, they start bringing up stuff from the past. And immediately Brian or Chase, one of them, is like, oh, well, that just means that it maybe existed at one point, but that doesn't mean that patriarchy exists today. And so they immediately start fighting on whether or not there's inequality today. So like examples that'll always like show like, yeah, even still today, men are still going to sit at the top of all these hierarchies is kind of like it's already like 5 steps ahead of where they're trying to get you.
Right. That was something that we talked about in our discussion with Steven, that I said like an example of this would be like I think only 25% of political offices in all of the United States, anything from like literally the president all the way to lower things like state representatives, only 25% are occupied by women. And then you could even like, if you're doing an intersectional analysis of that 25%, I would wager that the majority of women that are represented are not really in line with how the majority of women in the US live. Like it's probably predominantly white. It's probably predominantly like white women from affluent backgrounds. They probably have like, I think the average like politician has like a master's degree or even sometimes like a law degree. Like the average American does not hold anything beyond, like I think the average American like Like, what percentage of Americans even hold like an undergraduate degree? It's a minority.
Yeah, I mean, it's because I think this is actually the first Generation Z, that's gonna have over 50% with an undergraduate degree. But
yeah,
everyone before that, a lot less.
Yeah. In Pixie, you had said something surprised me. I think Lav is the only other person I'd ever heard say this, is that like being promiscuous is not necessarily a good thing. So I have feminists in my chat who say things like feminism, is when men objectify themselves at the same rate that women do. But then there's lots of feminists today, I'm hearing more and more, that say things like, oh no, like actually women need to pull back some as well. And so yeah, I was a little surprised by that. Are you what makes you come to that stance? Because I was a little disappointed that they didn't dig into that more.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say I was a little disappointed that you said that.
No.
Because I was gonna say, like, broadly what Lav was criticizing was like the sexual liberation movement, but
So yeah, basically, I don't think promiscuity is like an inherently bad thing, funny enough. I do think so. This is just personal experience, anecdotes, but I'm coming from like my life, whatever. I think sexual liberation was good. I still think it is good. I do think that basically people kind of started co-opting it, or kind of started going a little bit too far, just in the sense that it felt like I felt like it's become a certain point in time where women have been forced into like these like overtly like sexualized roles, or where like sexuality has been kind of like foisted upon them too, though, right? So to me, in my ideal world, it's like, if you want to be like sexual, cool. If not, like, you don't have to be that either, like present yourself and live your life to whatever is like best to your values and what makes you happiest, as long as you're not doing harm onto others. But I do feel, at least like growing up in like the media, like even like you look at like Instagram or even the cosmetics industry, right? It's not like this is relatively new, like it's happened for ages. I just think now with the advent of social media, it's like increased everything by tenfold. That there is this very high pressure of women to like
perform their sexuality.
Yes, exactly. Like whether it be like in porn, whether it be just how they dress themselves up because of Instagram, because of like these filters, because of the way that, Instagram is basically. So that's my perspective when it comes to these things, that like, oh, like you should not have to feel like you have to perform your sexuality. You should not have to feel that being a liberated woman means having a lot of sex. Like to me, like it's neutral. Like if you want to go have a lot of sex and that makes you happy, go do that. You're not really, as long as you're not harming anyone, which I don't really think you are, unless you have STDs or something, you're spreading that around. But like obviously most people aren't like that. And if you don't, that's cool too. You should, like, as long as you're doing what's most comfortable for your body and yourself.
So you're not saying that women should be less promiscuous, just that it's that I'm actually not fully getting it. So are you saying that women, it doesn't matter whether or not they're promiscuous? You're just not saying that it's necessarily a good thing to be more promiscuous? Or you're saying that it's okay as long as, like, if men and women were both objectifying each other at the same rates and objectifying themselves at the same rate, then that would be okay because it's more like equality?
No, I'm saying that basically promiscuity is morally neutral, unless if you're doing it because of outside pressures, then you're harming yourself, right? If I'm having sex with people because I feel like society's telling me that I should, because that makes me like a liberated woman or whatever, then that's bad, because I'm not being true to myself. And that's like self-harm in a way, right? I would say it's like a similar argument as if like drinking. I don't think drinking is morally bad, but if you start drinking because you feel peer pressure, then that's bad because you're harming yourself.
Gotcha.
Like I would also say, just like kind of piggybacking off of that, and I think like the parallel between like drinking and sexuality is good. Like it's not a question of whether or not like it's moral or immoral, but you have to remember that like women's liberation and empowerment can't just be all about the performance of sexuality if it's not also paired with like comprehensive sex education or and just general education and knowledge, because the entire point of feminism is to grant women more autonomy and control over their lives. So like we don't exist in a vacuum. We have like pressures and social biases to contend with like all around us. So it's in the same way that there are some people who say like, oh, I got plastic surgery like for myself. It's like, well, that's not really possible. Like, you know, when you say that you got plastic surgery for yourself, it's like, okay, but why did you get it for yourself? And usually they'll say, well, to feel more attractive. And it's like, okay, but why did you feel that you needed plastic surgery to feel more attractive? And it's like, well, because right now that is the, like, you know, having like a breast augmentation or having lip fillers or having Botox is what like mainstream cultural norms are saying is beautiful. So you're trying to conform yourself to this like beauty standard, but then back up and say like, but this is a choice that I'm making independent of any social pressure.
Yeah.
And like, I don't like that. I think people should identify that blind spot, and it's okay to get those things, but just be aware that like there's no way to make that decision absent any like social pressure or like outside influence. Like if I were born on a desert island as a woman, I wouldn't shave my legs, you know. I wouldn't like pluck my eyebrows. I wouldn't feel like a natural desire to like, let me get a breast augmentation. I want bigger lips. Let me get lip fillers. That's going to completely depend on like your socialization, you know, and like social pressures.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. That's a great take, because I generally hear women say things like, yeah, I only wear makeup for myself. And it's like, that's literally impossible. You can't say that. Like, you would never do this if you were just on like a desert island and you could find things to color your face in with. You would not do that just to make yourself feel better. Now, that can be part of it. You can do it like part of what makes you feel better, though, is that other people see you in a better light. And that's what makes you feel better, is that like it has to be in relation to other things. You can't just put yourself into a vacuum and act like you exist separate from everybody else and you're making decisions separate from everybody else. So I'm glad to hear you say that, because that's a rare one that I never hear other women say that. So that's it's a frustration of mine.
I'm not even trying to say that I'm not trying to say that there's any stigma or people who get breast augmentation should be ashamed. It's just more like I want people to try to like do introspection and like ask themselves like, is this a decision that I'm really making for myself, absent any sort of like pressure or influence to do it? Or like, you know, like I just wonder how one reaches the conclusion that like I just organically, naturally one day decided to augment my breasts or dye my hair a certain color. Like this is like plastic surgery is an example, but even things that are like less invasive can be like that. Like makeup washes off at the end of the day, right? But there can be like one of the reasons that somebody might wear makeup, especially a woman in like a workplace, would be because she feels pressure to dress up for work, you know?
I don't know if I completely agree with you guys though. I think in maybe more extreme cases that's true, but I think the reason why I don't know if I completely agree with you guys is because I've heard that same sentence be used before when it comes to dressing up nice. And I literally, before the pandemic, I did not care how I dressed. I thought like, oh, we're all going to grow old and ugly anyways. Like, why does it matter? And then it was only in this time where I was actually like isolated from society, basically, that I realized like, hey, actually putting on real clothes does make me feel better. When I like what I see in the mirror, I do feel good about myself, regardless if other people see me or not. Even like sometimes even if I know I'm not going outside or whatever, if I see like a pimple or something, I put a little bit of cover up, and that makes me feel better because I like what I see in the mirror. And you could make an argument, oh no, that's still all societally influenced. But I do think that there's an inherent standard of beauty that's like kind of biological to us that we can still like recognize, right? Like I think society plays like a big influence on it, but I still think there are certain markers that it's possible to like just for yourself or because you can see that beauty for yourself.
Like for an example of that, like I would say like an example would be like goth makeup. Like people who wear like extreme goth makeup to the point that I don't just mean like black lipstick. I mean they like literally paint their face white, they shave their eyebrows, they wear like black Victorian like gothic clothing, they wear the wigs, they've dyed their hair black, like all of that. This is like alt fashion or whatever. There isn't, it's so alternative that there isn't really like a social pressure to do that. So if I see people wearing makeup like that, I'm like, this is not somebody who is trying to conform to any sort of like traditional or mainstream beauty standards. This is somebody who wants to like set themselves apart from it. And I don't doubt that even in their own time, if that's their idea of beauty or like what they feel comfortable wearing, that they would go through the trouble, quote unquote, they probably find it fun to like dress up that way, even for themselves at home. Regardless of that, you know?
So even for something like alt makeup or goth like aesthetics, you're still fitting into some sort of clique, right? You're not dressing up like a clown. You're not dressing up like a crazy person. Though it might look very different from what everybody else is doing in society, it still fits into some group that
Like
is where it's
culture.
acceptable. Yes, exactly. There is a subculture where you're still looking acceptable to them and you're still fitting in there, right?
But then if you're like at that point, if you're somebody who's really interested in alternative or like counterculture, then that's you. I feel like kind of trying to satisfy maybe like an internal sense of rebellion where you learn the rules of the system, but to break them, not to conform to them or not to really contribute to them. Like you want to shock people, you want to stand apart. But like you're saying, like even that, like it's like counterculture people like will find like there's a social niche there where people can like gather and collect, and then I guess from there you're saying like additional social influences will like that's like almost like this very niche like form of like social pressure, right?
I feel like you guys are kind of conflicting consequence with the reason behind why somebody does something, right?
Well,
So
I'm
for
not.
example,
That's what I'm trying to
can-
say. It is both. I'm trying to say it is both. It's just never going to be absent of outside influences. That those like even when you're saying like, "Hey, I'm by myself. It's pandemic. Nobody's going to see me." What you think looks good to you is never going to be just what you like without outside influence. You're going to wear things that are stylish or that other models would wear, or things that are in season or whatever. You're still going to wear like what you think looks good to you, or what makes you look good is you thinking this is what other people will think looks good as well. And so it's both. It's always both at the same time.
Do you not think that there's like a biological basis for beauty? Like basically you can take like children who are newborns. Well, I don't basically, and like how I'm trying to think how to phrase this, but there's studies using like very, very young kids and basic like standards of beauty versus like ugly things, and they stare at things that we as a society already consider more beautiful, right? So like a pretty person versus like trash or something, or just like pictures like that. So then my question is like, do you not think that there's like an inherent like biological basis for beauty?
I think there are some things like aesthetics and shapes and stuff like that, but when it comes to what beauty is, those things seem to change over periods of time based on what it is that you're used to. So like I talk about this a lot on stream, that like when I was younger, men always told me, if your girlfriend or your wife ever asks, does my butt look big in this, you do not allow her to finish the question before you say no. The answer has to be no. She never wants her butt to look big. But then when I was like 16 and I said to my girlfriend something like, oh, don't worry, you don't even have a butt, she was like crying 5 minutes later, really upset with me that I said she didn't have a butt. And every girl, yes, and now like because the style changed, what was in style changed, and what we consider to be beauty or what we consider to be attractive, it all changed. Same thing with eyebrows, same thing with makeup, same thing with hair. Like all of these things changed dramatically to where one like group of people, what they consider to be beautiful can be very, very different like a couple decades later.
I don't disagree with you that I think beauty standards change and that they do influence what we consider beautiful or not.
And they're cyclical.
Yeah, but
like often a lot of times like you'll have one beauty standard that will like go away, and then at some point it will like find a resurgence or whatever. But
what I disagree with is that just because they're influenced by outside people doesn't mean that the reason why you do it is because of said outside influence, right? So even if it does like influence what you ultimately find beautiful or not, that doesn't mean you're necessarily just dressing up for other people. And that's why I keep going back to the example of like, oh, I'm dressing up nice for myself in my house. Or I think I'm even to a basis, like, I don't think it's all societal either. So I'm just
yeah, that's what I'm saying is that
oh,
it's never one or the other. It's always both. It is what you think looks good is always influenced by society, and
but that
if
doesn't
you
mean you're just doing it for society. Do you understand the distinction that I'm trying to draw?
yes, so your intent is still going to be influenced by society, but that doesn't mean that you only do it for society. And that's what I'm saying, is that you're never only doing it for one reason or the other. It's always going to be amalgamation of both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then it's just a matter of like how much is it influenced by, like, I don't think everything carries the same weight. like again, like the more niche it is, though, not that it's any less likely to have been influenced by an outside social perspective, but it kind of like casts into doubt that you're doing it as a result of peer pressure. Like I'll go back to the goth example. Like, is there a significant amount of peer pressure to, you know, dress up in like goth or alternative makeup? No, but there's like a way that it can be socially acceptable if you find that like social group and conform to it. But even just being alone, like, is not enough to say that like, oh, I know I'm doing this for myself because I'm doing it when I'm alone. Like, I know that there are some feminists that argue like women internalize the patriarchy when they continue to do things like shave their legs, shave their underarms, even when men aren't around, or like women aren't around, and like they place this burden upon themselves and they tell themselves like, oh, I'm doing this because it genuinely makes me happy. But now it's at the point like those feminists will argue that like patriarchy is so ingrained within you that like you're basically like this good little soldier that is going around performing these like performing for men even when men aren't looking.
But that's why I think I don't believe in those arguments, because I think that there is some sort of like biological basis of beauty that allows you to appreciate your own beauty or yourself in certain clothing, regardless of men or not. Just like intrinsic human.
Do you think like men and women have this equally?
Yes, I do. I mean, whether they perform it or not is different. But like, for example, even men, if they wear the same outfit for 3 days in a row, they start feeling unhygienic. Like they start feeling gross. Now, some men aren't taught like how to take care of themselves properly. So like maybe it takes even longer for them to change. But I think the majority of people, when they decide to like change that clothing, they feel a lot better about themselves, right? And I think some of this has to do with like hygienic basis as well.
Like, Tom, I'm gonna ask you, you have like facial hair, right? Okay, even oh shoot, I don't know, there's always like, were you streaming even back during like the pandemic and quarantine?
Yep. Yes.
Tom?
Yeah,
you were. Oh, okay, I was gonna say, like, is there a time where like, you know, you notice that if you don't have to see people for like longer periods of time, or you're just on your own, or you take breaks from streaming, where you actually don't keep up with like shaving your face and like grooming your facial hair?
Yep.
Or you do that regardless of whether or not you see other people?
Yeah, I definitely don't keep up with it, really.
Oh, really? See,
Yeah.
I think like, do you think that you're an outsider for that? Like, do you think that most men, if they're not going to be seeing like their friends or family, girlfriends, would just like not bother with like grooming their facial hair or their haircuts?
I don't know. I'm a bit of a mess anyways, and I'm like extreme. I have extreme ADHD, and I'm not like very I was diagnosed with OCD a while ago, and like anyways, long story short, I like have like a thing where I just like try not to get too compulsive with what it is that I do, and kind of ignore things too much. And so yeah, I have bad habits of now like letting things get away from me anyways. So yeah.
Oh, I see. Because that would be interesting. Like, I know, like, I can think of, again, like I have more female friends than male friends, but I definitely know for sure that I have female friends that I could go over to their house unannounced, and when they open the door, they wouldn't be answering in their pajamas with their like hair tied in a messy bun. Like, they would answer the door and they would have like their hair groomed, makeup on, and like clothing, and I'd be like, oh, did you go somewhere today? And they would say no. Like, I'm just chilling, but
yeah,
I wanted to like get up ready.
A good thing, like, so I was in prison for a while, and about half of everybody there, like half of them will take care of themselves really well and still shave, and you know, are all very like clean and hygienic the entire time. I was like somebody who like my hair literally like grew into dreads, and I grew like really long hair, and I just didn't,
is that
like,
dreads, or is that just like matted?
No, I twisted it, but it was dreads. Like, yeah, and so yeah, I like, there's kind of a mix of people where some of them they just don't care anymore, especially if they don't have visitors or anything like that. And then other people still just, yeah, do the same exact thing like they would if they weren't locked up, and there's just really no difference for them.
Well,
so,
but that's a new, I wouldn't say that you're in a vacuum when you're in prison. That's not like you don't have any sort of like pressure from the outside, because you guys still have contact with like people. You can still call people. There can be visits, right? And then there's also like a culture within, I would assume, like within prison and like jails, right? Where maybe does it conform to like the mainstream ideals of beauty? No, but there's probably like a very unique set of like aesthetic preferences, like between men, especially in prison. Like you're saying, like the dreads. Like I don't know that you would have actually felt inclined to have dreads had you not been in prison. But that's also like another social space, right?
Yeah. Well, and on top of that, when I was in county, I was on workforce, and I would go into the women's prisons or into the women's cells to clean, and they would all buy colored pencils off of the store to put on makeup and all sorts of stuff. Like they like made their own nail polish. They would still shave their legs. They would like all sorts of crap. They were still doing
the
all of
only
this
stereotype that I know is like prison tattoos.
Yeah, I definitely did not do that. I was not gonna do that.
Tom,
No.
why not? What would you have gotten?
Well, I mean, I have 2 tattoos now, and even those I kind of regret. Like I'm very I don't know. I think things out like a little bit too much to where I don't like making long-term commitments too much. So, yeah. That was like, especially doing one in prison where you're not sure how good of quality you're going to get. Most of the time prison tattoos are not very good.
Like, not just the quality, but like the risk. I would assume the risk, because like you don't know if
sterilization.
I would assume you probably don't have the most sanitary like needles and stuff. It's just so dangerous. It's like so dangerous that even if aesthetically you like it, you should probably wait until you're on the outside and just give yourself like a stick and poke.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, I waited until I got out to do stuff like that. I was definitely not gonna get.
Do you mind if we ask you about your experience in prison,
or like why you got in there?
Yeah, I was. So I was a heroin addict for a long time. From like the age 15 to about 19. And I was a con man. I was a drug dealer, and I would like rob houses. I would rob drug dealers. I was selling drugs. And so initially I got arrested, did 6 months in county, for burglary, residential burglary. I had robbed probably like hundreds of houses, but I got arrested for 3. Then after I did the 6 months, I got 10 years probation, got out, and then 2 weeks later got arrested on racketeering charges and debit card theft and debit card fraud charges.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you for a second.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dylan Burns, for the raid. I really much appreciate it. Hi, everybody. Right now we're talking
to Tomfoolery show.
Yes, we're just
about feminism, about his
prison.
Life and his experience in prison. So everybody sub, follow, chat.
Oh, thank you. By the way, if you're watching me right now and you haven't followed Dylan Burns, what the fuck are you doing? Go follow him right now.
And if you haven't followed Tomfoolery, go to Tomfoolery's channel and follow him too. But continue, Tom.
Yeah. So yeah, I was a heroin addict. Got locked up for 6 months. Got out on 10 years probation for about 2 weeks before I got locked up again and went away for over a year. And that time I went to state. And I was arrested on racketeering and debit card theft and debit card fraud initially. Ended up with like 17 counts of debit card theft and debit card fraud, and the racketeering just completely got dropped. So and then while I was in there, like the big story that like I talked to my chat about a lot is I got attacked by like a group of guards who shattered my kneecap, busted my head open, literally like tried killing me, were choking me for a long period of time. And
oh my God.
And then they extended my time and said that I attacked the guards when literally like they jumped me, came up behind me like while I was butt naked. So yeah. Yeah, well, so, and I have like knee problems to this day. I have to take Suboxone, which is like it's medication for somebody who's trying to get off of heroin, but because I can't take painkillers because I'm an addict, I have to take this instead, which isn't all that helpful, but it's better than nothing. So, yeah.
Oh my God. Like, they extended your sentence by like how long?
2 months. So they put me in the hole. I had like 2 months left on my stay. and they extended my, so I ended up there for like 4 months after they shattered my kneecap. So when I got out, like I had to take like wheelchairs everywhere, and had to like take crutches everywhere. I talked to a lot of lawyers. The first thing everybody asks me, so I'll just go ahead and tell you. I talked to a lot of lawyers afterwards, and that nobody was really interested in the case. It's kind of hard. You go into a room called the Shakedown Shack where they strip search you, and they're not allowed, like legally not allowed to have cameras in there. So that's obviously like the best place for them to jump me. And so while I'm, stripping down and naked, that's when they do it. And so there's not like a whole lot of evidence. The only people that are witnesses are a bunch of freaking criminals. So it was not a good scenario.
Do you think, well, I'm assuming if they've done it to you, they probably have done it to other people. So I don't know how realistic this is. But I wonder if you were able to put something out there, if you find other people with similar stories with the same guards.
Not really. I kind of, so when you're making like dramatic changes to your life when you get out, there's a lot of unfinished business that you just kind of have to like endure. Is I not for for bad word to use here, but
endure
but
the abuse.
Yeah, but you just kind of have to like put a lot of stuff behind you. You have to. I not only had to make changes to like whether my habits of like going and getting drugs, but just habits of who I was as a person. I lied like crazy. Like I lied like no other. I was really good at it. I was really good at keeping up with it. Nobody ever freaking caught me in lies ever. I was just great at like keeping all of the webs in place and keeping everybody where I wanted them. And I was really good at being manipulative and so, yeah, I had to like make dramatic.
Do you not have these like powers anymore?
It's not that I don't have the powers. Like I've worked in linguistic marketing for the last like 6 years, which is mostly rhetoric. And I got into it because of people who knew that I was like a con man in the past and that I had skills in being persuasive. And so they like sent me to classes and crap like that. And that's what I've done for a long time, is work in like persuasive language. So.
Like, have you worked with campaigns or something?
No. So I worked for like big corporations, mostly doing advertising. So some of it was like commercials, but mostly we're doing billboards, posters, stuff like that. And then my job for the most part was writing scripts for people who answer phones and then going and working with them one-on-one and talking them through like every situation, showing them how to answer phones and like how to talk to customers, how to deal with every little, niche possible scenario and how to word things specifically, that sort of crap. So it was always like coaching people one-on-one was most of what I did.
When you applied for this job, did you actually just I'm assuming that you they do a background check, so I'm sure you had to disclose your record unless you were like eligible for an expungement, which crimes like you're describing usually aren't. So did you already start trying to like turn it into like, this is a positive thing that I'm like I was like a former con man? Or did you try to just like state it and say like, oh, I'm trying to move on from that, and then like highlight your resume?
Yeah, so when I first got out, I couldn't get a job anywhere. So like friends would help me out here and there, and I like dressed in gorilla suits and held signs on the corner of highways and just like horrible, embarrassing crap. I lost my scholarship. I was going to school for radiology when I initially got arrested, but getting arrested for the types of charges that I got made me lose all of my scholarships. So I ended up working at Subway, where I ended up running the Subway fairly quickly. And then once I had done that and was like, had a record of being trusted, holding money, like, being the boss, I had kind of proven that I was capable of doing things. And so most anywhere that I went, they all did background checks, but I had a track record at this point, and so it didn't matter so much anymore. And even to this day, everywhere I go, I still have to give long drawn out explanations of everything and just kind of say like, you know, I have a long track record of being trustworthy and doing the right thing, and even went through 10 years of probation and got off of that without any issues. And so I'm you know, more like it never seems to be a problem for me, but I'm lucky in that case.
I think it's really good that you're transparent about the experience, and also like an example showing that like, well, I know statistically it's like not very likely that even after prison or jail, like there is a life and path afterwards, because like having friends of mine and like people close to me who have, it's like really the setbacks don't like just the time in those spaces, like in prison and like a brutal system like that is bad enough. But then when you get out, what you have waiting for you is basically, it's just everything feels like a booby trap. And that's why the recidivism rates are so high. Because like you're saying, nobody wants to hire you. It's hard for you to get to be eligible. I don't even think you can be eligible for like public housing half the time. And then your probation officer is like browbeating you about like, you need to be like applying to like at least X number of jobs every like 2 or 3 weeks. And we need to see proof of that. And like, you have like this like list of things and demands to do and report to, but you're like still pretty deep in the hole and you don't have like a shovel.
What got you or what started your addiction basically? Do you have other stuff going on in your life, or was it just like you were 15, somebody offered, you were like, fuck, why not? And then it happened.
No, it was a lot more stereotypical than that. I was in 8th grade, missed half of my first semester, just felt sick, couldn't figure out what was going on. My eyes would just go blurry. I would get very like dizzy. I was sleeping a lot. And so they just pulled me out of school, and they were just like, you're just not going to be able to go to school if you can't go, like show up at all. And I was literally sleeping 20 hours a day. Eventually they figured out that I had 2 cysts in my nasal cavities the size of golf balls that were pumping poison into my bloodstream, poisoning my heart and causing all sorts of other problems. So when I got out, after they had to take those out, they had to take out my tonsils, my adenoids, like all sorts of other things that were badly poisoned. And so it was like a you know, couple week recovery, but they gave me liquid morphine and liquid Demerol when I got out, because a lot of what you're drinking, you have to drink it because of how, because of like what it is that they're working on. They want it to like actually touch the things that you're, anyways, so I got addicted to my pain medication. I ended up, you know, I didn't take it while I was in recovery because I already felt like crap. And so I didn't like taking painkillers and feeling even weirder. But once I started getting a little bit better and I was in pain, then I started taking it. And then I really liked the way it made me feel. And then I kept asking for refills until they refused to give me refills. And then I started finding it in other ways. So, yeah.
Jesus. Tom, how old are you?
I'm 35. And at the time,
I feel like you've done in one lifetime, just in your adulthood, or like you said, this started basically like 8th grade, like very young. You've done more living than like most people do, even
sure.
in their whole life.
For sure. Well, I mean, and so far everything we're talking about is stuff that's like before I was even like 20 years old. And I tell crazy stories about, you know, the like getting in fights with people, selling drugs, you know, got like people pointing guns at my head, which has happened tons of times. You know, breaking into houses, all sorts of like, I love, everybody in chat enjoys the crazy stories. And so I tell a lot of stories over here about that stuff. But when I was younger, I know for you guys, this sounds crazy, but when I was younger, we didn't know that painkillers were addictive. Like, it was not a common thing. It wasn't well known. It was just like, you know, my parents heard that I was taking painkillers, like, and they're just like, oh, that's not good. But it wasn't a big deal. Nobody really cared. But everybody on my football team, as I'm going through this, they're all getting into it as well. And they're all starting to get on the painkillers and getting addicted to it. And so it became just this massive epidemic all throughout my my county, where all of the athletes were all getting hooked on painkillers and eventually getting into harder and harder drugs.
That's not surprising to me because the opioid crisis only recently exploded and like had national attention. I think that was the reason why it persisted so long, was because when you think about the average or like the median age of like a drug user in the United States, people probably thought of somebody who was closer to your age, but at this point the opioid crisis mostly afflicts like older Americans, but obviously anybody can be subject to like becoming addicted to a painkiller.
Yep. Yeah. And it was like, I grew up taking things like Adderall and Ritalin and all sorts of other things for ADHD, and supposedly we're much more at risk for getting addicted to drugs if we start out early on those sorts of things. So it all seemed to happen seamlessly when at the time.
Interesting. Do you mind if we ask like how it has impacted like your dating life? Like if you went on the Whatever podcast,
Jesus
like
Christ.
holy shit, if like they would have gone, I wonder, like they don't have male guests on that don't already agree with them or aren't there to like co-host with them. But like they probably would have like gone hard asking you like, so
are you a high value man?
Yeah, like how
through addiction?
Yeah, like how can you date after doing something like that? Like as far I know you've talked about having like different girlfriends in the past, like I've been in a conversation where you brought it up. So is that like a first date convo, or like do you get to it sooner rather than later?
I always get to it sooner rather than later, because I feel like if they find out without me telling them, then it's going to sound like I'm hiding it, and that can be pretty bad. Plus, I'm very open about this sort of stuff, so I'm never really trying to hide it from anybody. So even when I was going through this stuff, like girls do like bad boys, like it is a thing, like, and it never really was
so
like
drowned in pussy.
Yeah.
It was never an impediment for me. It was never an impediment for my friends. And
did you have like a particularly like cute mugshot?
Do you have a type of woman in prison, or type of, like I guess addict that was around you?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I wasn't like hanging out with women in prison. It's all men.
No, like before.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I had. Are you asking me if I had a type, or if what is the question?
Was a certain type attracted to you, would you say, for your...
Yeah, because you're saying that, like, okay, women and, like, girls, like bad boys or whatever. So, like, did you notice that you were kind of, like, self-selecting for a particular, like, type of woman?
Yeah, well, kind of. So, my dad's a pastor. My brothers are pastors. I was planning on going to seminary and becoming a pastor. Right. So most of the girls that I was dating are all the good church girls who are, super sweet and innocent on the outside, but that damn dude, those like the stereotypes about them are very true. They were always very pushy and quick. It was it was odd.
Okay, wait, what denomination is this?
Baptist, Southern Baptist.
Oh, okay. I was like, I need to get the like specific Christian stereotypes that we're talking about, and then we can go forward, because there are like different stereotypes. I feel like even within it, like Catholics would be a little bit different. But continue.
I mean, there is a stereotype of Baptists being fucking batshit insane, so this doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, well, so I only recently left religion. I've been religious up until maybe like 4 or 5 months ago, when I kind of decided to go more.
When we first met you, you were still like a practicing like Christian?
I'm not sure. I think that was probably right when I like kind of came out and said like I don't think I believe this anymore. And it was even part of like my online persona, like, that I was very religious, and that it was kind of hard for me to square like the dissonance between my religious beliefs and my political beliefs and the things that I debated, and like talking to trans people and having trans people as my mods and having gay people as my mods and all of this other stuff. And so, yeah, it was always kind of an issue for me.
Oh, interesting. It's funny that you use the term coming out, because like, as far as like my impact at the world, and like my parents know, like, they think I'm like a Catholic.
They think you're a Catholic?
I think with my parents, it's always been like, I remember I like trying to tell people in my family like I'm skeptical about this, like I'm an atheist, and they straight up told me no. They're like, no, you're not. Like, don't say that. Like, like they refused to believe it, and they were like, you need to just like go to church more, and like tried to like get me into it and like move me back into it. So like it's like an open secret. Like I think my parents know at this point that like I'm an atheist, or at the very least, if what like they can accept is that I'm irreligious. But they don't ask me about it, and I don't tell them. So I kind of just like let my family think like, oh yeah, I'm definitely still a Catholic, and like I haven't. It's not like I've been, questioning this since like I was a kid, basically.
That's so funny to me because my family has a very similar reaction. My mom was at one point like, I thought it was so funny the contrast because when my mom one time was like, Andy, I just stopped my name. Fuck my life. Pixie. If you're gay, we'll always accept you. Like, we'll always love you. And then, like, just like a couple weeks later, her being like, you better still be a Catholic. Like, Christ is very important. You can be gay, but you can't be not Catholic.
Well, actually,
we'll go.
My sister is gay, and she's married to another woman, and I walked her down the aisle. My dad did not want to do that, and it's like, but they are still very staunchly Christian people. Like I said, coming out because as an online personality, like, there's a lot of ideas that you're bought into because you're defending these and arguing for these and getting into heated debates with people over how much you believe that thing. And so that it's hard to come out and just kind of be like, yeah, so like all this stuff that I've been saying for a while, like I'm just kind of wrong on it, and I don't even believe it. And so it was more so that I recognized that I didn't believe in God, and that I probably hadn't for a long time, and that I was just kind of playing along. I had even in relationships always had issues with like sex, and always talking to my girlfriends about like, I don't know, man, like what shouldn't we be abstinent, like shouldn't we be like pushing a lot of this stuff back. And it always caused like more and more problems in relationships, and like it was just always kind of an issue for me. And so I think for the most part, it just eventually I kind of looked at all of it as just very performative, and I was like, it just all seems like a game that we're playing with each other to just constantly virtue signal back and forth. And I don't know if any of us actually believe in this, or if it's just like a community game that we're all playing with each other. So yeah.
Wait, but I know you're addicted, so I don't blame that. But like in terms of like the comment stuff, didn't you ever feel like, oh, like this is unholy? Or didn't you ever think like during sex, like, or when getting to there, like, oh, well, this is not more sinful, or did it feel more sinful than like robbing a house?
Yeah, it all seemed wrong. Like I always thought all of it was wrong. So it was I guess the more like you're drowning in like things that you're doing wrong, the less bad other things will seem. And so especially when you're like, deep in like gang violence and, very hardcore felonies, having sex with your girlfriend doesn't seem like the biggest problem at the time.
Yeah,
so.
The worst thing.
Yeah.
So like during all of that time, did you actually feel like your religion was like a stable force for good in your life? Or did you feel like it was actually like negative and like contributed to you being able to like move on from that?
There's pros and cons. There's a lot of good, and I really like what religion has been. See, I know a lot of people, once they leave religion, they feel like they were brainwashed. They really resent religion. They resent their family for getting them into religion. I don't feel that way at all, and I'm like happy for what it has done for me. I feel like it's a huge part of like who I am. Anyways, probably the major con though would be things like, sexual relationships. Like I was taught growing up that girls don't like sex, that girls don't actually like sexual things whatsoever, and that only guys like sex, and that women like love and men don't love. men want sex, women want love. And so women will have sex with men so that they can feel loved, and men will make women feel loved so that they can have sex. And so everywhere I went, I would have girls like trying to kiss me and stuff, and I would feel like I was pressuring them into that, and always feel really uncomfortable around women when they would like push things farther and farther. I always felt like I was making them do that. And there's so many bad stories of me like being at a party and a girl just like coming up and kissing me, and then me putting my hands up and being like, I'm sorry, and like walking away and like trying to get to like the opposite side of the house so that I don't make them like pressure them into feeling like they have to like perform sexual things for me. And so yeah, that's something that really
your
probably
very existence was like encouraging degeneracy and sin.
Well, it's just I felt like they thought that I wanted that from them, and that I was not going to make them feel loved unless they were doing sexual things for me. And so that's what I was always afraid of, is that they think they need to do this for me in order for me to be nice to them, or in order for me to like, love them. And so
for you to feel comfortable with the idea that like no women can consent to this.
Well, so the first time I had sex, a girl literally just like threw me on the bed and like pulled my pants down. It was like there wasn't much like there wasn't much like talking about it or anything like that.
Did you consent? Did you consent to that?
Sure, I guess. I don't know, but this was like almost every girl I was ever with after that. They were all like very aggressively like.
I don't know about that one. I was just saying.
Well,
I don't know if it's like any old first time.
Yeah, it's probably not stereotypical, but yeah, so that's like it kind of like it was more so that I had to, it wasn't that they couldn't consent, it was more so that I had to like recognize that women definitely desire sex, if not more than me, just as much as me. And so yeah, it was some that was more so what I came to terms with.
Everything
not that they
that
couldn't
you're saying,
consent.
like the red pill has like flipped the script totally on women. Seriously, that like you're saying like women are only after love and they didn't want sex, only men wanted sex. The red pill is like, no, women are definitely like degeneracy has contributed to women not caring about love, and if anything,
men actually love more. They just can't help sleeping around with everyone.
And the whole like alpha fucks like beta bucks. Do you know what this is or no?
Yes, I know it well, yes.
Okay, yeah. we know the theory, the hypothesis, right? Okay, like I feel like that's an example of like the script being flipped or whatever. There was something else that you said that like totally runs contrary to it. But yeah, like like women are like sexually aggressive, but yes, it's been known to happen that a woman has had sex with a man she did not love.
Yeah.
I think it happens daily.
This is something that I get into with them about pretty consistently, is my experiences are not stereotypical with women whatsoever. And so I have to kind of like tell them regularly, like, I'm not like the Giga Chad. I was talking to a black pill guy the other day who is this like gorgeous Giga Chad dude with these like bright, vibrant eyes and square jaw and everything. And he's telling me like, yeah, there's like women, like really good looking women, they're only ever going to get with the Giga Chads. And I'm like, bro, I am not that Giga Chad. But the more a woman gets to know your personality, you start to look better and better to them. And this is something that red pill does not get at all. Yeah, personality. Oh crap. To look better and better. Sorry, the background noise came on. So yeah, so I have to constantly tell them like, you're like, women include your personality, and that changes the way that you look to them. Like it actually, like you actually physically look different to women if you're confident, if you have charisma, if you're funny. Like you become sexually attractive to them more and more without having to be this Giga Chad in the first place. And you can go find attractive chicks all over the place who are looking for any guy who will make them feel special and who will woo them. And these are all things that will actually change the way that you look in their eyes.
I know, like to me the black pill stuff, I'm like, I wonder I guess it's more of the alpha fucks beta bucks thing, because I'm like, have you ever been to a mall? You will go to a Walmart. You will see couples all around you where sometimes the man is more attractive than the woman, or a woman is more attractive than the man, or it's an unconventionally attractive guy he's got a perfectly like beautiful like wife.
Oh, don't you know? She's a gold digger.
Yeah, she's a gold digger. I guess she's like secretly fucking like the outfit
the pool boy.
Yeah, the pool boy behind their back. And I'm like, how do they square with the fact that like the majority of like working class men like get married and like get laid all the time? If anything, working class men have like on average higher body counts than like men of like a higher socioeconomic background. So
how do you square with the fact that the vast majority of Americans don't cheat?
Yeah, stuff like this, like to me, I'm like, how are you not seeing just like glaring cracks in like your pill there and your like ideology? Because like you're saying, like the anecdotes that I pull from are like that. I'm like, you know, if you walk around, you're not going to see like one Giga Chad with like a flock of women following and all these like lonely men. There's couples everywhere, one. And then two, the other thing that's like, oh, this makes sense to me. Oh, Pete Davidson. Like Pete Davidson has dated some of the most beautiful women in Hollywood, and he's not conventionally attractive at all.
I think he's cute.
Well, you think he's attractive, but like he doesn't conform to like the average, or like he's not blonde.
If you just saw a picture of him, you would not think he was attractive. It's the other things that make him an attractive person.
Like it's his status, it's his sense of humor. He's now wealthy.
Is goofy.
And then the fact that he's dated women like Ariana Grande and like Kim Kardashian, that becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy because everyone wants what they can't have, right? So if women see someone like Ariana Grande, like, or like they know, oh, he used to go out with Kim Kardashian, they're like, well, Kim Kardashian is like rich and famous. Like, what did she see in him? Like, this guy must have something to him. So it becomes like self-fulfilling.
That kind of reminds me of Darius was talking about how he basically gets like third leftovers, kind of, because you're like, oh, you know Destiny and Destiny knows Hassan.
Oh my god, like 3 degrees of separation. Yeah. So you basically are Hassan.
Yeah, you basically are buddies of Hassan. Let me go on a date with you.
Yeah, that's you like you mentioned earlier, the women wanting to have sex, and this is something that I get into a lot with everybody in the red pill, is the short versus long-term dating strategies that like that either people care about just wanting to get laid, and it's normally based on like a portion or where they're at in their life. If they're looking for a long-term relationship, then they actually want to have like a long-term relationship, and they're looking for different things. But if they're not, it's going to be very like looks based. They're just looking for looks. And so these red pillars look at things like dating apps for stats, and dating apps are not going to reflect what people are looking for a long-term relationship. These are very short-term dating strategies. And so it's frustrating that they always respond with, well, women don't do short-term dating strategies. That's not a thing for women. And I'm like, who do you think these men are having sex with when they're doing short-term dating strategies?
I know.
Like, what are you talking about?
Oh, well, those are the Chads, you see. So that's the exception, because hypergamy. So 80% of, or like all women want only the top 20% of men. So if you're asking like, oh, how are these men doing it? You must be talking about a man who's in that 20%.
No, don't you know that those women aren't actually doing any short-term dating style or anything? They're gonna try to baby trap those men.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not possible.
Yeah, women in the 21st century definitely are not. Yeah, totally having sex before marriage and with people that they're not actually in love with. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's that, and like what is it? I completely agree with you. Like why I don't like when they use like Tinder stats or Bumble stats, because one, you have no way to independently verify it. Like there are private companies who selectively release these statistics, and it's completely opaque. There's no way to like for it to be like peer reviewed or anything like that. So I'm already granting that those stats are completely accurate. One. Two, they don't really give you relevant demographic breakdowns, because like the dating patterns between like every race are probably not going to be the same, but they're going to lump all like a Black woman, an Asian woman, a white woman, a Hispanic woman, all in the same just broad category of women. And there could be like differences there. And then they're not accounting for like socioeconomic backgrounds. So like like a woman swiping in LA might actually like look for different things when she's swiping than somebody who's like in New Mexico or in like Florida.
That's why I feel like they red pillars talk similarly kind of in that topic of people looking for different things when it comes to looks, or how like looks change basically from where you are. So I'm just thinking about how they call Melina Miami 4 basically.
Yeah, exactly. Like Melina's getting called in Miami 4, and they're pointing out how like it is relative. Like
Yep.
if certain women go to like smaller towns, they're going to stand out more and like see more success. But then like if you're the same woman, you go to LA, you're going to be humbled, right? But like another thing that they point out as a virtue is like, okay, women are the gatekeepers of sex, right? So you guys are so lucky because you can have sex whenever you want. And I'm like, okay, you can have the sex, but do you get the orgasm? No. Like most women don't orgasm, even with like long-term partners, and they don't orgasm from penetration either. On average, it's very rare.
Yeah.
So it's not even like completely fulfilling or like pleasurable sex as far as women are reporting. I mean, there's some women who say that they don't care about that at all. So I guess you could throw them in too. But like that's what they forget. And I'm also like, yeah, but you can get sex easily, but you can also get STIs and pregnancy very easily from those.
Yeah.
From those like sexual encounters. So there's still like a lot of cons with it. Like the type of man who is going to be like looking to have sex with a person that he met just a few hours ago or like just for a hookup is somebody who is open to doing that with like anybody, right? Like they're probably like, again, it's like sexually promiscuous behavior that carries more risks than like having stable like longer term partners.
Yep. Yeah, I just had a conversation with Torsia and Playing with Fire the other day, and I was extremely triggered afterwards when like I was trying to get into it with them about short versus long-term dating strategies.
What did Playing with Fire say?
I'm not sure because my callers yesterday were trying to tell me that some of what we like me in the chat thought he said, they felt like he said something different, and so I'm not so sure anymore. I thought he was disagreeing with me and that he didn't really believe in short versus long-term dating strategies. And a lot of what he talks about, so like Playing with Fire started out as a pickup artist, and so a lot of what he talks about when he's saying like he's using dating apps, he's saying most people meet through dating apps and stuff like that, and I'm like, no, they don't. Most people meet at work through friend groups, like yes, most people are meeting IRL, and they're like, no, both by far most people are meeting on the internet. So I start like showing them the stats. I'm like, it's like 10% of people are meeting through like dating apps, and those dating apps don't lead to long-term relationships. Dating apps are short-term dating strategies only. When we're talking about like marriages, it's like 5 to 10% at most how many people are actually going to have met through dating apps. So yeah, it's a very small percentage of people. They're looking at the wrong things a lot of times, and it's a little frustrating. So I've been talking more and more about dating stuff and red pill stuff and kind of getting into those communities lately, but I don't know a whole lot about them. So
and like I don't doubt that it's increasing, but they act like we're already in this age where like people have abandoned trying to like meet prospective partners in person, and absolutely not. Like that's another thing is that like people's Tinder profiles, like, again, I've never used Tinder, but when I've taken a glance over my friend's shoulder and they're swiping or whatever, I see so many profiles from both men and women where I'm like, this is an attractive person who's probably very charismatic, but they are limiting themselves because they don't have a good bio, or like their photos are like not very flattering.
Guys don't know how to take photos.
Guys don't take photos very well. And so I think, and I'm like, they're like swiping left on the guy, and I'm like, 100% if you had met that guy in person at a party, you would find him attractive.
Guys don't take good photos, and I don't even think they're used to like dressing up for like the female gaze, honestly. Like I feel like I see Tinder photos of guys holding a fucking fish, and then I'm like, okay, great, now I associate the smell of dead fish with you and a dead animal. Cool. Oh look, your next picture is a picture of a gun. I don't fucking know you, but I know you have a weapon that can kill me.
Yeah, like guys they will put things that are not actually images of them, or they don't use photos that were taken within the last 6 months. And I'm not even saying that like they're catfishing people and they look like they're much heavier, much skinnier, less muscular or something like that. But like they don't use recent photos. They'll use photos from like the last 2 years, and I'm like, you probably should only have photos that you took within like the last 6 months max, ideally like 4 months.
I use long-term photos. I'm just too lazy to take new ones.
There's one thing that I tell. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I bet if I look at photos of you from like 2 years ago, you basically look the same because you're probably the same BMI and you haven't changed your hairstyle.
No.
And you have like, if you have the same glasses and everything, then like, yeah, or like their photos from a distance and stuff like that. It's honestly like, I think the bigger problem would be like if you're trying to use close-up pictures, and like selfies of you from 2 years ago, I'd probably say might not be like up close. But if you're doing photos where you were like at an event, I think that's fine. Like if you want to include like a photo, like, oh, I went to like Disney World, or I went to like a concert or something like that. okay, like that's not your fault that it wasn't taken in the last 6 months. If you still look like that person, like you from 2 years ago, then like use it. But what were you gonna say, Tom?
Yeah, I talk a good bit about how guys can like improve dating profiles, and the issue with a lot of guys is that it is mostly looks. That's what almost all of like Tinder and online dating profiles are going to be about, is our looks. But I like one good thing you can convey status within those pictures as well, and that's something that a lot of people can work harder at, is like dressing up nice. One thing that women in my chat hate it when I say this, but it's very true. Show pictures of you with your ex-girlfriends. That's a very good one.
I think with your friends. And
Wait,
your friends
Yes,
are girls,
well, and then I was gonna say, and then
green flag.
traveling. Yes, if you're traveling out with your friends, out partying, stuff like that, those are always very good ones as well. So yeah.
I don't think it has to be specifically your ex-girlfriend.
Yeah, why do you recommend the ex-girlfriend specifically?
So we're talking about status. So if this is something that every girlfriend I've ever had has told me, is that when we first started talking, they all went and looked through my profile and started looking through pictures to see what types of girls I had dated before them. And
can we see your profile?
Yeah.
Like my Facebook profile?
Or no, is your like dating profile public
or Instagram?
Oh, I don't have. I like my Instagram is just the Tomfoolery one. My personal one got banned.
Why did it get banned?
Why did you get banned? And when was this?
It's a long story. It's a lot of crap, but yeah, my personal one got banned, and then I don't have online dating profiles currently. So, but yeah, they like so. If you have attractive girlfriends, girls like to see you with other attractive girls, and then they're like, yeah, I'm dating a guy who dates attractive girls. I'm an attractive girl then too, and like it is a helpful thing.
Okay, so it's like it's desirability. It's also like I think precedes scarcity.
Well, it's a way to convey status. Like it's a helpful way to convey status.
Because I feel like this is like, is this the male version of like women who kind of like, you know, like they are very transparent about the fact that they have multiple guys talking to them. That like guys are just like, they have so many guys in their DMs and stuff like that, you know.
Say that again. You're saying that girls have multiple guys in their DMs?
No, it's a male version.
Then I'm saying like this like dating strategy that you're recommending to men, because you're saying like include a picture with like a past girlfriend of yours.
Oh no, I'm not saying anything like that. No, I'm saying that there are ways to convey status, and these are just some ways that you can do that. That's all I'm saying. Yeah.
But I was saying that's like there will be people who are like they're transparent about it in a very subtle way, that they want to, like, they're talking to somebody, they're in like a talking stage, right? And they're very transparent about the fact that they're continuing to see other people, you know, that like, oh, okay, like, oh, this is like, you know, I'm going on a date, or like they'll post on their like Instagram stories or their public profiles them out on a date with like a guy, but also like friends.
Yeah,
you know,
I
but
would not.
showing that like this, you like, you're not the only person who's trying to like be interested in me, and that can like encourage, like, I mean, people, grass is always greener, and people want what they can't have.
I would not recommend that. No.
No. I'm saying I know that this strategy already happens. It's like, I mean, it's why these guys surround themselves, like you're saying, it's a status thing. It's why these men surround themselves with a bunch of women, because like women attract other women, especially when you're a man surrounded with women.
I feel like to me this is like, to me it's a green flag just if he has like woman friends. I'm just like, oh cool, enough other women don't think he's like so creepy that they can't be friends with him. Like I don't see it as a like, he is such an alpha macho dude. I am now have been attracted to him. Like that just sounds strange, and it's not true for me, or I don't think it's true for most women.
Because what you're saying about the ex-girlfriend, I could see a lot of women being like, I'm swiping right on this because they think you're going to be interested in a third for like a threesome.
Oh, like that's so true.
Or they're like, I don't want competition. Like I want a guy who's like emotionally available, and if he's including
not
photos,
over his ex.
Yeah, he's not over his ex.
No. So okay. So you. All right. If we have to get into more details, so you don't just show a picture of you with your girlfriend. You halfway cut her out of the picture so that it looks like you're trying to crop her out, but she's still there enough so that she can see that there are girls there. So yeah.
That's amazing. This is a unique one, Tom. You have to tell me, like, and you've had success with this personally and anecdotally?
Yeah, kind of. So in my area, there's not a lot of people on dating apps. Like I'm in Georgia, suburban areas where it is very religious. Every like Tinder profile says things like only looking for long-term relationships, crap like that. So it's
Crap,
not
like long-term relationships. Who
Wanting
wants
to find somebody to marry.
No, yeah, fuck that. Okay.
Well, so when I was on dating profiles, I had just gotten out of a long-term relationship, and so I was just looking for like, just
fun.
short-term stuff. Yes, and I was probably only on them for maybe like a month, and went on a couple of dates, and most every match that I got, I was not really like interested in it, and was way too picky the entire time.
On them, right?
Or you swipe right on everything.
Wait, when you say like you didn't end up being interested, is it because you ended up like messaging them and you just didn't feel like that spark, or you were swiping right on people who you didn't find actually very attractive?
Yeah, so it was a bit of both. So like there were times where I was just like there were times where I would like message people and they just weren't very talkative, or it was me asking them a bunch of questions but them not asking anything back, or really like or it was all like short answers, and so I would cut those off pretty quickly. And then there was also like I went on a couple of dates and yeah, they just were like disastrous. Like I was not it wasn't, none of it was fun, and so I just didn't enjoy dating apps at all and gave up on them pretty quickly.
I can always tell when I'm at a restaurant and I'm surrounded by people who are like on a first date, because you can hear them asking each other questions. And they treat it like, it seems like people tend to treat a first date like an interview.
It is.
And like when I eventually go on a date, I'm like, is this what people do? Like you just sit there and ask each other questions. Don't get me wrong, questions lead to interesting conversations, but the interview thing is kind of what's weird to me. Like, okay, I ask a question, now you ask one. Like, there's never a point where you just kind of reach like a discussion on like one or two things. Like, it's like, no, it's like learn about each other's backgrounds. Like, I feel like I'd want to learn about that person, I guess, more organically than like, what's your favorite color? You know, it's better if I like ask a story or something like that, or like, you know, I don't want to have to ask like, what's the most exciting thing from your childhood? It would be better if like we just naturally
talk about childhood.
Yeah, like you're talking about your childhood, and they're like, oh, like my favorite memory was when we went on vacation to like, you know, Europe or something like that when I was 5, and then it gets shared that way. I think the interview thing is very strange.
Yeah, I wouldn't interview them, but I would try to like ask a lot of questions and then give like short things like, oh yeah, me too, that's crazy, blah blah blah, what about this, like it, that to make it so that it doesn't feel like an interview. But I think lots of people do get stuck in like a interview type of pattern. I did want to ask,
this isn't like dating advice, I guess this is more advice like that I've given to people when they're looking for friends. And I'm like, don't volunteer information that the person hasn't asked for just on that first date, because I've had friends who came back from like a first date and they like really felt like they connected with the person and that they had a lot of chemistry, and then even just a couple of dates later they're like, it's weird, we're not really like clicking in the same way that we were, and like they're kind of boring, or I'm like losing interest very quickly, like I don't know what happened. And I'm like, because you made something up in your head, like you didn't, like you were so excited for that first date or like meeting this person for the first time that they like, you asked them a question, they gave their answer, but then they didn't ask you anything in response, and then you just shared it anyway, and it feels like you connected with them, but in actuality that person didn't actually inquire anything about your life, if that makes sense, you know?
Yep. I know I've been in those scenarios where I was definitely asking questions, but I was not asking for what they gave me, and it gets awkward afterwards, and I don't think they know that it gets awkward sometimes. So.
Oh yeah, like that's why the interview thing, it's like if you're waiting to be like, okay, like ask me a question, and it's treated just like a one-way thing, like how are you ever supposed to reach any interesting point in the conversation? Because if you don't engage back, I guess that's why I say that like we have to move away from like the interview thing. Like questions should be inspired and like organic, right?
Well, speaking of, I like that you guys asked me questions for this hot date, but I do have some more questions about the the podcast. Generally, I do like it. Like, it's kind of annoying. Lots of times I'll say, hey, do you want to come talk? And then they come on and it ends up just be like me asking the other person a bunch of questions, and it gets tiring pretty quickly. So I do like that you guys ask questions. But I had so Pxie, I did want to ask you something. So this is something that me and my chat noticed. So I wrote a document about gender that like, because I worked in linguistic marketing, I just have like an interest in pragmatics and what is being communicated with words like man and woman. And so I felt like writing like an entire theory on it to like start a conversation. A lot of what you said was like there were like 3 or 4 different times where it was almost like verbatim what is in my document. Is this just a massive coincidence, or did you happen to read this at some point?
Admit it.
No.
Admit it already. You several times notes.
No,
Admit it.
You can, not most, I guess, but you can see a good amount of my gender views on my Discord. Actually, I have a little thing called like Pxie's Politics, and I like wrote, yeah, like I wrote some beliefs or views I have about gender in general, and then also the industrial like prison system in general. And I think one more topic I can't remember of. So those are, yeah, that's basically, I've thought about gender for a very, very long time.
Okay. I mean, look, I don't
Do you
mind if
remember,
you
like,
steal
what
all my
example
ideas.
specifically?
You can just credit me next time, and it's it's all good. It's
Wait,
not a
what
big
ideas
deal.
did I supposedly steal from you, Tom?
I don't remember exactly. So the
This is faulty.
It doesn't even remember his
So-
own theory, but
Yeah,
well, it's like a 10-page freaking thing, so it's a lot in there. So one thing. Okay.
That's like a good length for somebody who's not published something, but
That's like a lower tier schizo post. Okay.
if you were gonna say like, oh, this is 100 pages, I could understand, but just like not even like
10?
one position.
No. I've got a couple. Okay, so so one of the things that I talk about in there is prototype theory, and we talk about like how I explain the gender spectrum and kind of how it works, and that there is a prototype at each edge. And one prototype is a 50s style housewife, and the other prototype is Hulk Hogan. And you kept using Hulk Hogan as your prototype, and so that was just one thing. But that was one thing after there were like 3 or 4 other things. So like one thing was it literally says in there like something like, you know, you think when you say woman's bathroom or something like woman that you're talking about a female, but in general you are never actually checking somebody's chromosomes to decide whether or not you're going to call them a woman. You literally said that. There was at least two
I
more.
don't know, did I lift something from it too? Because the example that I gave was, I think it was Nev who asked you, like, how masculine does a woman need to look in the face before you get uncomfortable?
Mhm.
I didn't even get to give this example, but like, there are a lot of cis women who have medical conditions that make them more predisposed to have like masculine characteristics. Like if you have polycystic ovarian syndrome, you can, you're more likely to grow like chin hair. So that could literally become like, again, like you have like facial hair that's like a masculine feature. Or
You don't have to go that far. You can just say
I
an
said
ugly cis woman.
an ugly cis woman, or like I said butch lesbians. I was like, butch lesbians, there are some butch lesbians who are so masculine presenting that they toe the line and just look androgynous, you know?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I explained in the doc is like it's a common question that people ask, like, well, then why aren't butch lesbians you know, on the man side then, if it's really about masculinity and femininity? And so like I kind of explain in the doc like why butch lesbians wouldn't end up as women, or sorry, why they wouldn't end up as men on there. And so yeah, it's I have to rewrite a good bit of it. Like President Sunday, Kid Not Kin, Aiko, a number of people went over it, and I mostly wrote it for people on the right to read and be able to understand better what we're talking about when we're talking about gender. And then when a bunch of lefties read it, they got like the opposite of what it was I was trying to communicate in numerous parts. And so that was really like frustrating watching them over and over get the exact opposite of what I'm trying to say. And so there's a lot that I'm like, I'm getting ready to go rewrite now. And there's at least 2 professors that I know of that use this in their class. I know that there's students that have like passed it around their colleges. I know of like nonprofits that use it.
When you say that they use this, do you mean the examples that you kind of elaborated on in your document, or you're referring to your own document?
The actual document.
Interesting.
Sheesh, you need to DM me which of these are like passing around your shit, Tom. I want to see. But that actually wouldn't surprise me, because sometimes if you go solely off of like visual identification, there will be some people who fall through the cracks, I guess. I wonder if like that was one of the main critiques. Because again, if you're going to say that gender comes down to a matter of like passing, then I can see how there's going to be some trans people who say that like, well, you know, gender, like you can have your gender identity, but be still like masculine or feminine presenting. So like if you are a trans woman, right? But you're a masculine trans woman, then that might be at odds with people saying that like, well then if you are, even though you're identifying yourself as like a woman, if you present so masculinely, still people are going to like interpret you as like a man still.
I mean, you have the same problem with like, it goes back to like, oh, the people who don't even pass, even if they're like cis as well, just like, oh, if you don't meet every identifier or like marker, do you suddenly stop becoming a woman? And it's like, no.
Yeah, and like I have my bio undergrad, and like with biological sex, when we're determined, like there are like 6 different features with biological sex. There is like reproductive systems, there's gonads, there's hormone balances, there's chromosomes, there's I'm trying to think of there's 2 more
gametes,
but you can have like you don't need to satisfy all of them, or you can, like many people don't actually have all 6, but yeah, we still categorize them as like man or woman or man or female or male, even though we're not actually like verifying the other 2 or like like all 6 of those.
Yeah, in the document I define female under those who produce the larger gamete, because I don't really get into what a female is as much, just explain that.
Or like that would be like gonads.
Sure. Well, and I even say at times, like, if you want to define it by chromosomes or gametes or
secondary sex characteristics.
Yes, whatever. Like that's fine, but I'm more so talking about gender, and so I kind of explain that like gender is just something that's attached to sex, or these are like stereotypical characteristics of a sex, but I try to like lay off what sex is, because that's a lot more complicated. So when we talk about characteristics, I use the chair example of like, you know, well, what is a chair? A chair is a concept, and go over like different types of chairs, and then I show a chair spectrum. And
yes, yeah, all the way from like a bench to a horse, right?
Right. Well, so then lots of people then ask like, well, you know, with a woman, like, well, what if they have like these characteristics, and does that make them less of a woman? And I'm like, well, if like you take the legs off of a chair, is it less of, or sorry, no, if it's a computer chair instead of like a wooden chair, is it less of a chair? They're like, well, no, we just categorize it as chair. I'm like, exactly. Like, we just categorize this side of the spectrum as a woman and that side of the spectrum as a man. You're never more or less of a man or more or less of a woman. You're just man or woman. Yeah.
Oh, fuck. What, there was something like the what is a woman question. I feel like the right now thinks that they have like the gotcha on the left, that is not like as simple of an answer as they want, because they just want to conflate sex and gender, like you're saying. But humans in general have a hard time defining nouns. Like you're saying, like if I went up to somebody and said, can you give me the definition of an apple? They would struggle. Or if I asked them, can you define what a chair is for me, please? They would struggle, but I wouldn't from there interpret or like take from that, oh, these people don't even know what an apple is, or they don't know what a chair is. I'm like, no, it's just difficult for, like, we're not dictionaries. People have a hard time like defining these things. And like, there's also different ways of like defining something. Like you can define something by like obviously there's the dictionary, but then there's also like operational definitions or like functional definitions, or like different ways of like satisfying an understanding of a concept or a word within a conversation that doesn't actually refer to like any authority. And like the dictionary anyway is not like the be all end all authority on linguistics anyway. So it's just one. And usually like a dictionaries are not like prescriptive, right? They're descriptive. They just tell us like how a word is currently being used in like a culture or a society. It's not saying that that is the static, unchanged definition of that word till the end of time. And I think people think that.
Well, so that's why, like, in the document, I have to say over and over, like, I'm talking about pragmatics here. I'm not telling you how you ought to use words like man or woman. This is not political. I'm not trying to, like, push any sort of agenda. I am just explaining pragmatically what it is that we're communicating when we say words like man or woman, and I'm only explaining the conceptual side of this. That's it. That's all I'm doing. And so lots of people, I've had numerous conversations with radfems about this or debates with them where they think that I'm like pushing some sort of like, you know, trans ideology thing. And I'm like, this literally has nothing to do with trans people. It's not about trans people. It's about gender. Everybody has gender. You don't have to be trans to have gender. We're just talking about gender. I'm not prescribing anything. I say it over and over in the document, but they still come at me saying like, well, this is completely political. It's all about trans people. You're just trying to say that trans women are women. I'm like, I'm not saying anything like that. I'm just saying this is what we're communicating with the word. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're saying, like linguistics it's not really even like a matter of like prescriptive. It's mostly, it's like a matter of analysis and like description. And I think like if the document is aiming to like show conservatives or people who are skeptical that there's like a concept of like a conception of gender that goes beyond just like sex and we don't like really use those interchangeably, I feel like there's so many examples where you can very quickly demonstrate. Like, I mean, the example that we used on the podcast was like the female Hulk Hogan or like Buck Angel.
Yeah.
You know, like I even saw an example from like Lance of the Surfs on Twitter where he showed a picture of like Kim Petras. And he also showed a picture of like a very masculine trans man. And it's like a straight man in his worldview should not be attracted to like a trans woman, but they should be attracted to a trans man. So like Buck Angel or like female Hulk Hogan should like, a straight man is very unlikely to be attracted to like Buck Angel, you know, who's like not.
Or Hulk Hogan with the vagina.
Or like Hulk Hogan just because like this example of like the Hulk Hogan like had a vagina.
Yep. Yeah, so that's like we were watching it. You can go back and watch it on stream. Like there was like 5 or 6 times where we stopped. We're like, yo,
shout out
she's freaking copying all my stuff.
I'm in your walls.
Yeah.
Base. But yeah, I'll send it over to you guys if you want to like talk about it sometime. That would I enjoy those conversations. It's mainly the reason that I wrote it was just to like I've talked about this numerous times. The reason that I wrote is because when I first got into Twitch politics, I was talking to a lot of far left people. And every time I asked about gender or would talk about gender, they would give very different definitions and very different understandings of what gender was. And that was insanely infuriating for me. And so I looked into it more and more. And the more I did, the more interesting I found it. And the more I wanted to talk about it. And so eventually I wanted to just like write an entire idea to kind of give people a starting place to just say like, this is generally what it is that we are communicating with words like man and woman, and what it is that we're looking for conceptually. But that doesn't mean that like if you want to like abolish gender or some bull crap, like you probably couldn't do it totally, but it's like, you know, this isn't about that. This is just mainly about like starting like having a starting point to know where we're at currently so that you can have prescriptions from there. So yeah, that was, but okay. So what we didn't really get a total answer. So I'm assuming, Straighterade, that you are saying that you weren't meaning to troll or anything like that, because I was arguing with my chat for a while where they're like, she's definitely trolling, and I'm like, I don't know, she's kind of always like this. She answers a lot of questions with questions. So
I was literally like, again, as Tom, you can like vouch because we've like spoken in person, we've spoken in DMs, we've had like calls on stream before and like private VCs. So I feel like you more than anybody, or like not more than anybody, but like more than the average viewer person realizes that like if you see my stream appearances, like I was saying, like sarcasm is kind of like my first language, and like being kind of like sassy is like kind of like, I hate using the word sass, like sass I guess is like my second. So it was really effortless on my part, and that was like oh my god, people thought I was trolling, but really I was like just kind of being myself, but being myself was pissing them off. And I was like like laughing because I was like, are they really like getting this worked up over it? And I'm sure in like a roundabout way that kind of like influenced me to like continue down that path or whatever. And so I'm like, oh, I'm triggering them, I'm trolling them. But I found it amusing. I wasn't intentionally trying to like throw them off and like sabotage the podcast or like troll them. I'm like, no, I guess if people think I'm annoying, I'm genuinely just this annoying people.
Oh,
like,
you're just so narky.
I'm just really snarky or whatever. So that's why I was like, I need to work on the combativeness because I don't want that to, I don't want to pander, obviously, but I don't want that to come at the expense of like a good conversation or for people to not understand where I'm coming from, because it might also just be like a side effect of parasociality, because I am familiar with like Brian's like work, like been subscribed to the whatever prank channel since I was like in middle school. So like I know his content. I had not really watched too much of the podcast until recently, but I like know so much of his like prank videos and stuff like that. Like not even a few months ago, I was trying to find like a very specific one that he had called Messing with Strippers, where it was like 10 minutes of him in the red light district in Amsterdam trolling the sex workers. There were some things that he did. I was like, you should not be doing this to like these poor like fucking broke ass women. It's still there, but it's like 2 minutes and like 30 seconds. Like I can't find the full one anywhere. I remember trying to like find it on Vimeo. So like I know Brian and like I know his personality, but he doesn't know me. So I feel already comfortable like talking to him, and like the other guests are being like friendly enough before. So like I'm being myself, but then people think that's like troll mode, and I'm like, no, like
you're natural troll.
That's literally like, I guess I'm just like naturally that sarcastic, so I need to like tone it down before, and like let people get to know me and see that like I'm not just trying to like trigger people endlessly for no reason. You have to like build that rapport first, and then you can do that, you know, because like I don't think that I was making it clear where I was coming from. So in the same way that like there were lots of times where I was being not bad faith, but not as charitable to them as I could have been, because like from the very beginning, I'm like, it's like slightly antagonistic to me, just slightly, and like playfully, right? If I'm like treating them in good faith, to ask me like if I'm a virgin within like 5 minutes of the podcast, because I'm like, well, where are they coming? Like, why do they want to know that question yet? So we'll get into it later, where like it might be more clear, or like everybody's asked that, you know. So like and then he keeps like returning to it, and I'm like, what? Like, why is he like fixating on like my virginity so much? Like, I'm confused. Yeah. So that kind of leads me to be like, are we like playing a game? But then he literally was like, is this like a game to you? Like yes. Anger and frustration. I was like, I mean, I thought it was. Like, I thought this was like
a mutual game, consensual game.
Like, yeah, I was like, isn't the whole point of this podcast basically like that you clip farm, right? And you try to like trigger the feminists, and we try to like not dodge your questions, but like, I mean, I inadvertently, or like, I guess I ended up dodging questions too much, right? Because I was like overly, I guess like seeing like gotchas where there weren't, you know. But then in turn, like that frustrated them, and then like we just spiraled from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I don't
like,
think, like,
to be clear, Tom, like you were correct that like I was not going into troll or like whatever. But I also don't want to like some of the questions that they answer, like, what do you get from me learning that I'm a virgin? What do you get like
just to make fun of you,
like or like my bra size, you know? What, or, like,
again,
you know,
it's not to make fun of her. It's like, again, they're just very anti-feminist, and so they're like, these are things that is from their point of view. Feminism is telling women, be loud and proud that you have a lot of sex, that you're very promiscuous, and that you want everybody to know that you're out there just getting laid and having fun. And so they ask women these things because this is them showing their audience, like, see, they're all so proud of it. They all love. And so if you just go on there and you're just like, oh, I don't want to answer, they generally just move on, or they'll ask like other semi-related questions. But like, I think it was Lav who said, like, you know, this is torture porn, don't answer these questions, like stuff like that. And they just like, okay, and they just move on, like, when people do that. But you weren't doing that. You were giving like evasive answers, or answering with a question. And so over and over, it just sounds like either you don't want to answer the question, or you're trolling them and like trying to like annoy them or something. And so even I was like confused. Like I at least at first I thought, okay, she's being genuine, like this is just generally how she is. But then after they keep saying stuff like, why aren't you answering, like, why, you're answering questions with questions, stuff like that. I was like, okay, now she knows, and she's still doing it. So she knows that she's doing it and is still doing it. So now I'm confused. Now I have no idea
Now
if
you're
this
like,
is on purpose or not.
in troll mode or whatever.
Yeah, I had no idea.
No,
well,
like,
and
I
then
think
Destiny and Melina are looking at each other, laughing every time, and so yeah, it's hard to tell.
Like, it was what is it? Like, people are thinking there's too much like 4D chess going on. It's not. It's like you can find yourself in the middle of a conversation and look back, and there's no road behind you. You don't even know what path you took and how you ended up in this part of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only watching it back that I'm like, I can like when I got kicked, I was like, I can tell they're frustrated, but like even just like how quickly that escalated was just over the span of a few minutes. People are like, she was holding up the show for like 30 minutes, but it wasn't like a contiguous 30 minutes. It kept like or like a continuous 30 minutes. It was like
in different increments.
It was like in different increments that I don't doubt the sum total was like amount, like maybe 30 minutes talking to me total, but people would make it seem like there was a 30-minute stun lock when they say that. So I'm like, it wasn't that long. I would say like the longest stun lock was maybe like 7 minutes. But every single time I was evasive about the question, I'm like, that'll be the thing that like they drop it. And then they didn't. And so like I was not like, I guess again, it's weird to say changing up my strategy, but I was not changing up my answer, and it wasn't occurring to me. Because to me, are you a virgin is a very like, it's a non-serious question, it's very like, it's a frivolous, like random, like question, like invasive question that they want to ask to like throw you off or whatever. So every single like little, like a bit of evasiveness is not them picking up like, oh, she doesn't want to answer, we'll move on. They were just becoming more and more confused, like you were, Tom. And it's like disorienting to both them and the viewer. Like, what is going on here? Like, is this a joke? Is this a game? Is she trolling? Is she being serious? Is this how she is? Is she socially inept? Like, I should have just been like, I don't want to answer that question, and told them like, here's why. In the same way that like Lab was like, don't read them, that's like torture porn. Like she didn't just say I'm not answering that. She said, like, I'm not going to rate myself on a scale of 10 because I don't think that's conducive with like feminism. I think our like looks are overvalued, and it's like not very important.
Well, I mean, saying that it's not like
so much better.
I think saying that it's not a serious question, I think, is going to be like a very unsatisfying answer, because that's the type of stuff that they're asking. It's a dating show. You know that this is I would say that it is serious. That like this is literally what the show is about. Like the show is about like talking about these sorts of things. This is what the show is based around. This is like that is their style. And so obviously, yes, they want to click farm. Thankfully, like everybody else got to click farm the hell out of them this time. The clips came from them looking bad, and they're the ones who blew up and looked, and went viral and looked like idiots. But
Endure. Yeah.
Yes, but I think most people. So did you not know that they were going to ask these sorts of things, or did you not think of it ahead of time, like a type of answer, or?
I knew, but like I underestimated how much they'd press. Because again, like why would they like I didn't get why they tunnel visioned in on me, and like we're fixating on like how much do they care about like a random girl's virginity? Well, apparently a lot, because they kept pressing me on it. And then even after I left, like I told you, they asked Pxie and they asked Steven, and going so far as to speculate that I might have been gang raped, and that was why I didn't want to answer. So I was like if I had like if I was omnipotent, I could like know in Brian's head that it's like that important to him. Like again, like that aside, I should have just been forward, but I never would have imagined that we would get stuck on that. I literally just thought they would pick up that like again, any like you go once, somebody dodges or like is evasive or doesn't answers a question with a question. You try one more time, and then if they still don't, you dunk on them or you point that out, like, okay, so you're dodging, whatever, and you move on.
Yeah, I think that I understood their frustration, but I thought it was really dumb that they kicked you off, and especially that they kicked you off to like get rid of the impediment to the show, yet spent like 15-20 minutes talking about you afterwards. That was ridiculous, dude. And so that's what I was like
15 or 20, but it was like it was like, again, there was an additional impediment from me leaving, and like people were saying like, well, something big just happened. Like, wouldn't they want to talk about it? And I said like, not really, because again, if you're declaring that I'm holding up the conversation, wouldn't you want to get rid of like the roadblock and move forward?
Well, I would say
no,
maybe, but for like 30 seconds, 2 minutes, but not as long as they did. It was well over 10 minutes. I thought it was 15 to 20 minutes, somewhere in there. Like yeah, I can understand like, yes, like an uncomfortable thing just happened. And so now let's kind of like debrief, sure, but not for as long as they did. They all just sat there dogpiling, and you're not even there to defend yourself anymore. So it was weird.
I was on
we were under the bus.
I was on Fresh and Fit and with Pxie, and 2 women got kicked off on our episode, and it like held up the show because off camera they wouldn't leave. But when Myron returned, he didn't keep talking about them. He was like, let's continue.
Like, thank God they're gone.
Yeah, he was like, yay, they're gone, because they were like interrupting the flow of the conversation or whatever.
Yeah, I was I was a bit frustrated by the way that they handled that. And I thought, like, obviously kicking somebody out is just good content, and that's why they wanted to do it. It didn't seem like it was much more than that, because they could have just stopped asking you questions. Like, it would have been that easy.
Like it also might have been like a frustration that, like, again, I called out the premise of the show. I said something about like clip farming, and I said you guys only have like the attractiveness thing because you want the chat to roast just how delusional everyone is, right? Like by saying like somebody who is in their mind clearly a 3 out of 10 is saying that they're a 10 out of 10 and they can get whoever they want. They want the chat to roast it or whatever. Like, I think in combination with me, like, kind of poking holes and like in the matrix, as it were, like, you know, first rule about Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club. The first rule about like the premise of these podcasts is that like it's kind of the open secret that we all know that like that's what's going on here, that like they clip farm and they're trying to like dunk on people and like get asked gotcha questions, and they're not really interested so much in the answer, only insofar as like they want to take your answer and like kind of twist it and like get you into like a more personal or kind of like uncomfortable hot seat. And so in combination with how I'm answering, me drawing attention to that, they were like, I think she's here to sabotage. Like, fuck this. Like, we're gonna get like, if we're not gonna get a clip of her saying that she's a virgin, like that she's a virgin, or that she's not a virgin but she hasn't dated anybody, then we're gonna get the clip by like kicking her out. Like, that could be one way that escalates or whatever. I did think it was lame that they were like, it's not us, like we're respecting democracy, and it's the chat who wants her gone. And I was like, I mean, just say that you want me gone, right?
Yeah.
Like why are you acting like the chat's influencing it? Like Brian was frustrated, I think, independent of like whatever the chat was responding. And then like they asked Steven, like, hey, are you going anywhere? So like, you know, I'm thinking like, again, don't ask him. Like, if you want me off your podcast or whatever, like kick me, but like you shouldn't be asking like any other guest what's gonna happen, right?
Okay, wait, we're in low battery, so Tom, do you have any final questions, statements before the phone runs out, basically?
Nope, actually, I was just about to say that's really all I got. It was a pleasure talking to you guys. Oh yeah, I do have one more question. Are you a virgin?
The world may never know.
Tom, I have a question for you. What is a virgin?
Who knows, dude? I'll have to write a new document on that one.
Okay, but like unironically, like I'm just not in the habit of like answering questions like that on stream. I may change my mind at some point, but like right now I'm not jumping at the bit to like disclose everything about my personal life. So sure. I don't answer stuff. I'm not gonna say never, but I currently don't answer questions like that. And then unironically, what is a virgin is a very interesting question that they're not going to explore in the podcast, but just because like with like there's so many different like, you know, gender dynamics and like sexuality like changing and stuff like that. Like, I think people used to associate virginity with like only penetrative sex, but that's obviously with like, okay, lesbians, gay men exist, like non-binary people exist, like masculine and feminine presenting people. Like, it does pose it, like kind of throw a wrench in like the old conception of it. So.
I could unironically see that becoming legitimate red pill advice. Like, you want to find yourself a lesbian because she hasn't been penetrated by other men.
Very true.
And all women just really want high value men, even if they don't realize it. So if you're able to like show your value enough to like a lesbian, like you'll get a virgin woman.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Tom. Okay.
All right. Well, I appreciate it, guys. Y'all have a good night.
You too. Bye.
Later. There's their link, guys, in the chat if you want to go follow them. They're streaming on Twitch. The poll, we got 120 votes. And the end product is feminism about equality? 63% said no, 36% said yes.